Bum 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 ba dum bum bum ba dum bum bum ba da da bum bum ba da 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 da. Do the Mario. Boom 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 doo doo ba doo boop ba doo boop ba doo boop ba doo. We're streaming. We're streaming today. We're streaming away. We're streaming. We're streaming. We're streaming today. I actually need to come up with not come up, but I actually need to I have an idea for a theme song or like an opening thing for the show. And I feel like I should do the work to actually make that happen because I actually have the song in my head. I know what it is that I want to do, and I even went and did some AI art in order to get some art done so that I could do not a music video, but like an overlay kind of a thing over the music. I just need to record it and actually do it. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Well, you know what I'm not putting off? Starting my stream a couple of minutes early. So I assume it's going to take a little bit of time before people get in here because they're uh, 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 it is January 24th, 2024, 5:58 p.m. How you guys doing today? I hope you guys are all doing well out there in the world. I have been chilling out. That has been my last week. Literally just me and my pug being chill. I'm essentially on vacation. So it's and just to remind everybody, I'm not going to be streaming next week or the week after. So I'm taking a 2-week hiatus because I'm going back to Manitoba. I'm going back to Manitoba to see family and to hang out with family for a little bit of time. And then coming on back, it's going to be nice. I'm glad that I'm going out to Manitoba at the absolute coldest possible moment. I've chosen Manitoba. I'm going out to Manitoba for the coldest possible month, Not smart. But it's not like I chose the time, honestly. It was just that this is the time that was available and this is what I had, right? Monsieur, good to see you on Twitch. Good to see you. Oh man. I hope you guys are all doing really well out there. Things are getting dumber. Things are getting dumber, and they're getting dumber at what was the dumbest thing that I think I saw today? Yeah, from the World Socialist website. We just gotta be adults about the situation. Ocasio-Cortez calls for vote for genocide Joe Biden. As the death toll in Gaza goes over 25,000, with more than 1% of the population killed in just over 108 days of ethnic cleansing, Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, has reiterated her full support for Biden's re-election campaign. Her statement was made on the I've Had It podcast hosted by Jennifer Welch and Angie Pump Sullivan, which describes itself as a comedic feel-good podcast, which will expose you to all the things you didn't know you've had it with. Ocasio-Cortez joined the program, the show notes, to play a hilarious lightning round of Had It or Hit It. Welch and Sullivan briefly starred in the short-lived reality television series Sweet Home on Bravo. The show centered on Welch, an interior designer working in Oklahoma City, and her quirky best friend, Sullivan. I love how this article is written, right? I love how this article is written. It's just like quirky and kicky and fun. Yeah. Resist. I've had it with AOC. Yeah. Like I've been calling it for a long time. The Bernie Bros and all this kind of stuff. It's just Hulk Hogan. That's all. It's getting entranced by AOC and the squad and all of these people, right? It's like believing that Hulk Hogan was actually a hero. That's what it's like. That they're not actually going to stop any of this stuff from happening. They're not actually there to stand in the way or be a resistance movement or any of that kind of stuff. They're pro-genocide, right? They're willing to stand up and say certain things, right? Because that's how they play Hulk Hogan, right? But they're not actually willing to go to the mat. They're not actually willing to do any of that kind of stuff. I'm so glad she found her calling helping to overturn federal regulations on sunscreen. She's dealing with the important issues. Yeah. What's the Muslim lady, one of the gang that's pro-Palestine but supports sending arms and money to Ukraine? Yeah, I forget her name offhand too, but I know who you're talking about. Rashida Tlaib is Palestinian, and she's bent the knee to Zionists in Congress. Yeah. Gabriel writes, "Hey John, just got done my last exam for this semester." Woo! Is it about that time? Dude, why are you writing exams? Why are you writing exams in January? What the hell? What kind of ridiculous exam period is supposed to end before Christmas? What the hell? What the hell, Gabriel? Gabriel? What the hell? What the actual hell? I'm glad for you. Don't drink too hard, okay? Like, this is stupid, right? To be said that we've got to be the adults in the situation, and that being the adult in the situation means voting for Joe Biden. Like, get the actual fuck out of here. Get the actual fuck out of here. Grade 12 stuff. Ah, I didn't realize that you were a high schooler, my man. What the hell are they doing to you that are making you do exams in January? What the hell? That just seems odd. Well, the whole fucking school system is a bit odd in the first place, right? Like, what a ridiculous thing we put kids through. Like, just absolutely dumb. Like, I understand, like, reading and writing and math and all that. Like, these are important things to teach people. If you want to have, like, you can't have an intelligent society if they don't know reading, writing, and math, right? So those are some basics that we all kind of just take for granted, but it's actually, like, this really enormous social system, right? Like, can you imagine if we actually said to parents, like, no, you gotta pay. You gotta pay if you want your kid to know reading, writing, and math. Yeah, that's a good way to regress your society in major ways. But grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, I'm just like, nah, we can get rid of that, right? We can get rid of that shit. We can get rid of grade 9, 10, 11, 12. What we should do instead of forcing kids to sit in desks and listen to lectures about events and things like this, is we should instead take those kids and one by one really begin to inquire of them, what is it you think you're here for? Like, we all randomly generate in. Here we are, right? We don't know the process by which we are spawned in. Like, we understand, like, the process on this end. Two people have sex, right? So two people bone, right? You spawn in. We don't really know what the process of you spawning in is, or what is it that you are, really. We're trying to figure it out. But at the end of the day, you're just like this randomly generated life form that has this entire internal life. So what is it that you think that you're here for? What is it that you are drawn to? What is it that you're here to proceed with? And we should begin that when a kid turns about, like, 12, frankly. And then the whole conversation should just be this constant checking in and this constant check back of, okay, like, are you pursuing the thing that you think that you're here to pursue? What are some goals that you want to move towards? How do you think that this is beneficial for not just yourself, but for the community, for people around you? How do you think that this is going, right? And instead of, like, just jamming kids with, like, Thomas Hardy and, like, Tess of the Dubervilles, and getting them to sit down and read Shakespeare out loud in a group, and wasting everybody's time with, like, we're going to teach you the finer details of trigonometry, and, like, having kids actually ask, like, every kid that I grew up with literally was asking, like, what are we going to use any of this? Like, what is this for? Like, why are we actually being taught any of this? And then you just steadily begin to realize as you grow up that, like, oh, this all exists just to waste everybody's time, just so that we become, like, good worker drones for an industrial capitalist system. Like, that's the whole point. that you're supposed to learn how to tolerate sitting in a room listening to somebody drone on about something you don't care about, and respect that person's authority, right? To be able to be like, and then when they say do this task, you just say yes, sir, and you just go do it, right? Like that's what they're actually training you for. That and a big reason why they get kids to do a lot of pointless stuff is to get them used to the idea that a lot of the stuff they're going to do is pointless, right? Get them used to the idea, like get them disconnected from their own labor. That's what they're actually teaching kids. That's the purpose of grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, is to get kids to detach themselves from their own labor so that they get used to the idea that it doesn't matter what they're doing. Just do it, right? Just do what you're told, just do it. And so you do that, right? And you have no real connection to your labor, and you've got no real connection at all to the outcome or the purpose of what it is you're doing, because that's not what you've been trained to do. You've been trained to say yes, sir, and do what you're told. And this, of course, benefits the system of capital explicitly. Contin, good to see you. Oh, 1 second, guys. Sorry, my dog is in a crisis. Crisis mode, little pug. You okay, buddy? You okay, buddy? You okay, buddy? You okay, buddy? Okay, buddy. Okay, buddy. I got you, buddy. I got you. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness, buddy. Oh, buddy. It's a bad one. Okay, bud. Oop. Okay, bud. I know, buddy. I know. I know, buddy. It's a bad one, eh? Oh, buddy. Sorry, guys. I really gotta take care of this, or else he's gonna really hurt himself. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Oh, I know, I know, I know, I know, I know, I know. Oh, buddy. Okay, bud. We gotta go big. Oh my goodness. That's a good boy. Yeah, that's a good boy. Did we do it? Did we do it? Did we do it? Okay, buddy. I think we did it. That's a good boy. That's a good boy. You good? You good? Good boy. Good boy. Here, buddy. I'm gonna give you a treat. That's so dumb. Here you go, buddy. There you go, buddy. Come on, buddy. In you go. Okay. Crisis averted. There's your capitalist innovation right there. There's your capitalist innovation right there, guys. That's capitalism innovating the pug. That's what it's doing, right? Yeah. What the hell was I talking about? I think I was just saying, like, we should let kids be kids and let them do what they want to do, right? We should just let kids be kids and let them do what they want to do. And like, I feel like if the purpose of the system is not to say to people as they come in, what is it that you're interested in? What is it that has taken your interest? And it isn't to facilitate that and allow that to flourish and allow that to grow in big and serious ways, then what's the point of the system? Like, what are we actually doing here? Right? You have to ask yourself, if our economic system actively destroys the biosphere and fails to meet most people's basic needs, then what is actually the point? Like, one of the things that is just so obvious to me, I recently started to watch, and I say started to watch because I stopped after about a half hour, the Destiny Ben Shapiro quote unquote debate. Not much of a debate, frankly. The two of them fundamentally agree on most things. They're both pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist, pro-genocide. Uh, um, and so, like, what they disagree on is just, like, whether or not kids should have, like, school lunches or not, right? Von Schweringer, good to see you. Been a while. Has been a while. Good to see you. Glad to see you. Hope you're well. Feels like this last week has been pretty, like, chill. Feels like everybody's being a little, like, viewership is exactly as it has been for the last little while. So it hasn't been a decline in viewership, but it's definitely been, like, quieter. I think everybody's just kind of feeling it this season. I think there's a lot of people just feeling it, you know, that we're in the winter months. Big question about why we even go to work during this period of time. What's the point? Why are we continuing to move around and do labor during this period of time at all? Like, who gives a shit at all? Like, what every other creature? Do you know what every other creature is doing right now? Every other creature, when winter happens, they hibernate, right? They chill out. They just relax, right? Because winter is upon us. Here it is. It sucks to go out. It sucks to do labor when it's like cold and dreary. Not humans though. Humans got to go out and be as productive as they ever were, even though like all retail work at this point, like all service sector work, like is essentially dead over January, February. Like it's literally like a dead period where there's no work to be done. Why? Because nobody's going out and like going to events or anything like this. But you got to show up, right? You got to be there. How'd I get my beard that awesome? It just kind of happened, my man. Honestly, it's just my internal manliness. It's my inner Marxist, just saying, hey, you're gonna be amongst the big beard ranks of Karl Marx and Engels. Like, it's just how it's gonna be. I'm hoping that this beard is like a herald, a sign of things to come. That'll go up. My face will belong on the chart of other ones, and everyone will be like, yeah, he had the beard, right? He had the beard. There is a competitive beard thing with Marxists. Hilarious. But in regards to like how did I do it? I didn't do anything. It's just this is how it is. That's all it is. It's just how it is. When it comes to beard growing, I have the beard growing ability. That's what I have. I've got the ability to grow the beard, and that's as simple as that. Like, I was talking very briefly there about that Destiny Ben Shapiro debate. The debate wasn't a debate, and I just kind of stopped listening because I was like, oh, Destiny's pro genocide. Like I don't understand why anyone thinks that they should be regarded as intellectually credible while holding on to a pro genocide position, right? Like if you're going to stand in front of people and if you're going to say genocide is good, or justifiable, or we can attempt to justify genocide, then you don't really have anything worth listening to. You're not really a person we need to take seriously any longer. And that would be Ben Shapiro and Destiny. And so it's very strange, right? This is very strange how we are supposed to listen. Like when Lex Friedman, no, I'm talking about very recently, Ben Shapiro had a debate with the streamer who goes by the name of Destiny. I don't know his actual name. Uh, which it's sort of weird that he's still going as like a moniker that a teenager would use. But okay, that's his name, Destiny. Okay, sure. Uh, uh, and they were on the Lex Friedman podcast, and when they were introduced, they were like two of the greatest debaters in the West. And I'm like, if this is the best that the West has, it's no wonder we're in this sharp decline, right? It's no wonder we're experiencing like a precipitous decline downwards, because these guys are dimwits. Like defending defending genocide, like attempting to say that the actions of what Israel is doing is acceptable, makes you a dimwit. And it's because there is such a thing as an act that is itself morally unacceptable, right? Torture is one of those things that you can't torture a person. There is no acceptable justification for torturing someone, right? That Sam Harris attempted to defend the torture regime of the Bush administration by creating a false fiction, which was the ticking time clock scenario, which gets used in 24, the television show 24. But the United States military itself says there's just no such thing. Like, this doesn't actually exist. And the circumstances for it existing are just like, it's literally not how anything works. It's just a fantasy. It's just fictional. But Sam Harris uses this as a ad hoc universal justification for why it's completely fine for the United States to torture anybody they want, while failing to recognize that torture itself is a morally reprehensible act, that it's an act that proves to the person you've tortured that you are evil, right? That your justifications for why it's okay to torture somebody is certainly never going to be accepted by the person that you're torturing or anybody who is related to that person that you're torturing, and in fact only serves to align others against you. Why? Because you are torturing people, right? So torture is one of those things. Genocide is exactly the same. There is no justification for it. And so when guys like Destiny and Shapiro stand up and they attempt to defend it, you literally can just say, so what? Right? Like, well, Hamas did this and Hamas did that, and there's this other thing and all of these things, and Hamas did this, and it's like, so what? Who cares? It doesn't justify the act of genocide. Like, because you can't justify the act of genocide. Because it's an act that is injustifiable by its very definition. There's no circumstance by which you can justify wholesale extermination of entire people. It just doesn't exist. And so whenever they stand up and they give their rationales and they give their reasoning, they're just confessions. They're just saying it's acceptable to do a genocide, we feel, because of X or Y or Z. That they've created a standard for themselves by which it is okay to commit a genocide against other people. Like, I don't think that you can be around people like this. I don't think that you could, because they are creating, like, a person that creates a justification for when it's okay to go scorched earth against an entire group of people can create those justifications for when it's okay to go scorched earth against you, right? I've said previously, it's like flat earthers, right? You can't be a friend with a flat earther. Why? Because if a person refuses to acknowledge the existence of the earth being round, if they just decide that the earth is actually flat in spite of all of the evidence, then they're going to turn that type of logic against you at some point. They're just going to decide something about you that is fundamentally untrue, They're just going to make that decision, and it doesn't matter what evidence you show them, and it doesn't matter what facts or logic or reason you provide for them. They've made the decision, and their decision is all that matters in the conversation. So you can't actually be friends with these people because they can turn on you on a dime for no reason other than they just decide to do it. And it's the same with people who are justifying who are justifying genocides. If they can use that logic against those people, they can use that logic against you, right? That it's totally fine to just scorch earth here because we say so, is fundamentally their argument. Monsieur writes, it's easy to become blasé about this when there seems to be a constant genocidal behavior perpetuated mainly by the West in the world. Yeah, this sort of blasé... Yeah, to be a pro-Western commentator really necessitates complicity with imperial and genocidal behavior. Yeah, that's the trouble, right? That's the trouble. Methane, good to see you. XD, good to see you too. I don't think I said it's good to see you when you came in. Good to see you, bud. Machiavellian villain archetype. I mean, like, the trouble, like, it's not Machiavellian what they're doing, right? It's just dumb what they're doing. Like, the West doesn't know what to do. Just yesterday, I was pointing out that Joe Biden has explicitly said that he doesn't think the bombings on the Houthis is going to work, but they're going to do it anyway, right? Because they don't know what else to do. They don't actually know what else to do. Speaking of that, there is Suez Canal container ship crossings. Yemen Houthi attacks trigger massive redirection. You can see right here, there's just been a massive, massive decline. This little dip that you see here, if you recall, that's when that shipping container got caught. Remember, it got caught in the Suez Canal, and so it just was like plummeted this for a very brief moment. Well, that same level of disruption is happening because of these Houthi attacks on the Suez Canal, right? It's creating it's being very successful. Yaroslav Hunka, weird name to begin with. Critics of Israel want a genocide, unlike me and my Chungist Waffen SS comrades. That's the strangest comment ever. Critics of Israel want a genocide. What are you talking about? It's just kind of an embarrassing position to begin with. And then, unlike me and my Chungus Waffen SS comrades, it's just kind of, what is this? Like the moronic Nazism and communism are the same. This kind of embarrassing Ben Shapiro talking point that has infected the discourse because morons who talk fast seem to matter more than actual facts or evidence. What were they even debating about? Which method to destroy Palestine? Yeah, I just think that, like, that's part of the thing, right? I don't think that they... Yeah, I think that's right, XD. Yaroslav, I think this guy's just already gone, so it doesn't matter. Just another dimwit showing up and being a dimwit. Yeah, Destiny and Shapiro, like, what were they even debating about? What was so funny is that in the brief half hour that I could bear listening, they said, I agree, more often than not. They were just like, oh yeah, I agree. Oh yeah, I agree. What it really amounted to, right? And what I think is important, the only important thing that actually happened in that debate was that it was the two of them exchanging viewers. Right? It was them taking their viewerships and having them coalesce with one another to grow both of their profiles. And really what it was, near as I can tell, is kind of a tacit alliance between the two. Right? What have I said all the time on this channel? Liberals and conservatives are allies. Right? And it was the two of them kind of getting in the same room and acknowledging, okay, we are actually allies. That we fundamentally agree on all of the issues that matter, and that our disagreements are mainly just cultural, are mainly just cultural disagreements. Like Shapiro's of the opinion that the number one decline in the education standards in the United States is two-parent households, right? That there's been a decline in two-parent households, and this has destabilized families, and so that's declined the kind of that's had a decline on education standards, and that may be true, but of course, what Shapiro will pin that on is black culture, right? Is essentially what it boils down to, right? It's black culture that's at fault. Certainly has nothing to do with a system of capital. Right? That because guys like Shapiro and apologists like Destiny have no actual critical analysis of the system of capital, and they think that capitalism's great, and when it does genocides, it's the greatest thing, right? Because they have no actual systemic analysis or criticism of capitalism, then they can just be racists, right? That is black culture that does it. It certainly has nothing to do with a system of capital that's forcing. When it used to be one person could work, support a spouse, and have 3 kids, now both people need to work. And people like Shapiro just pretend like that doesn't have an impact on the family unit, right? Because Shapiro believes that magic is real and that a magic book has all the answers to our problems. Have a good one, Vaughn. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, Hunka was some old Nazi, a crappy little one, yeah. Well, he got venerated in the Canadian Parliament. I think it's just, it's kind of embarrassing to walk around with a name like that, honestly. But I mean, just yesterday I had a conversation with somebody who was pro-slavery, like genuinely pro-slavery. Seems to be the libertarian position, is to be pro-slavery. Resist says, Houthis been getting bombed by Western armed Saudi Arabia for years. They got no reason to fear this shit. Yeah, I mean, it's, it seems to me like here's the major story, near as I can tell. Like, the United States wants to put itself out there that it's this big military threat. And it's got all of this military expenditure, and it's got all of this like terror that it can spread around, and it can bomb people, and it can do all this kind of stuff. Well, it can't deal with these Houthis, right? How come it can't deal with these Houthis? You're telling me that the United States, the largest, most terrifying army that exists, that is supposedly going to stand toe-to-toe with China, that's supposedly going to go toe-to-toe with Russia, even though they lost that conflict pretty handily, that's supposedly going to be the number one superpower, and they're going to reclaim their greatness, make America great again, and all this kind of stuff. They can't beat, like, rabble. Like, they can't beat these Houthis? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that to me should be the number one story and the number one thing that people take from all of this, right? The number one thing that people walk away from this moment is how weak the United States actually is. That they don't actually have the capability to launch major offensives or fight major wars. Right? They don't have the personnel. They don't have the capacity. That what they have built is not a strong and powerful military. They've just built a frat club, right? That the military has essentially turned into something of a fraternity. And it's also lost a ton of its own personal prestige. Like, I've got this great meme right here that definitely... Come on. It's perfect. Oh, please tell me I actually have it. Oh yeah, that's it right there. I'd like to summarize recruiting in the summer of 2022. This is from the U.S. Army Recruiter Times. Today we approached a man in a full duck costume, flipping a car wash sign in 96-degree heat. We offered him $35K and a job. He told us to fuck off. I think I'm going to go get a cheap bottle of liquor, find a park bench, and contemplate life. Yeah, I hope everybody in the United States military is doing exactly that. Because this is more or less the opinion of the entire world right now in regards to the United States military, including most citizens. Men in duck suits flipping signs telling the United States military to go fuck themselves. Right? Because there's nothing respectable in the United States. You're not doing anything worthwhile, right? You're not doing anything worthwhile. that the ranks of the military are being filled by the most desperate or the most psychopathic. The people who either don't care that what they're doing in the world is completely illegitimate, has no credibility or legitimacy whatsoever, or revel in it and are completely fine with the idea of going overseas to murder people because that's what you get to do. You get to murder people and you get rewarded for it. So any sane, rational thinking person who understands what the perspective of the United States is going to look at the United States military with nothing but contempt, right? Mikhail, good to see you. Methane, yeah, I don't know about this blockade, but I was like, wow, how? A little low-tech force? Come on, yeah. Look, the United States doesn't have the personnel. That's really what it's boiling down to, right? Like, they don't have the people to be able to maintain what they're doing. And they certainly don't have the people to be able to, like, storm into Yemen and successfully dislodge thousands of people who have geared themselves and aligned themselves against the West, right? That this is really what it's boiling down to, guys. Like, the United States has made a big hoorah and a big hoopla about its technological edge, right? That's what it's all been about for the last 30, 40 years, right? Oh wow, we've got all of this high-tech military power, and we've got all of this high-grade drone warfare, and we've got bombs, and we've got all these new weapons and toys, and look at our new plane, and look at our new tank, and look at this, and look at that, and look at this. Oh my goodness. They don't have people, right? It's a volunteer force. They don't have people to actually maintain any of this, because the people are beginning to see what the United States military actually is, which is a Nazi force, right? That's what they actually are. They're a white supremacist Nazi force that go into the world and act like Nazis, and expect everybody to love them for it. And the only people who are willing to actually stand up and defend this, right, are people who are pro-genocide and just like lunatic maniacs like fucking Shapiro and Destiny. The degree of industrialization in the U.S. and the West really has shown how I think Russia outproduces the collective West in shells and ordnance, and it's bread and butter that wins wars. Well, I mean, we're starting to see. I've got this great little graph right here. Yeah, the United States is beginning to recognize it, right? They're beginning to recognize that, oh, the deindustrialization of America was a problem. Construction by manufacturers in the United States, spending has more than doubled in the past 12 months because they're beginning to realize, and they're like people like me and commentators like Richard Wolff and the communists and the socialists in the conversation who have been calling it correctly the entire time. It's having an impact. People within the power structure are beginning to go like, oh wait, what do we make? Oh wait, what do we do? Oh wait, and the answer is fucking nothing. We don't make anything. We don't produce anything. What we produce is war. That's all we've produced for the last 40 years. And I think there's a lot of people that are beginning to understand and recognize we can't continue that way. We simply cannot continue that way. That if the strategy moving forward is just continue impoverishing your own country and extracting wealth into the pockets of a billionaire class while doing nothing to actually build up meaningful production, then you're going to fail, right? And so here's the United States playing catch up. The problem is that now that's exactly what the United States is doing. They're playing catch up, and they're never going to catch up. Right? The United States population 350 million is never going to catch up to China population 1.5 billion. It's just never going to happen. Right? That China is just going to go pa-pump, 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 especially as China is led by a group of people who are actually like, how do we meaningfully increase productive capacity in this country? How do we meaningfully make it so that next year we are more productive than we were last year? How do we meaningfully do that? And there's literally no conversation about how does this enrich 5 men? Oh, but Elon Musk isn't going to like that. That conversation just does not exist in China. It's how do we increase the productive capacity of China year over year over year over year over year. And if some billionaire stands up and goes, well, I don't like that, they go, who fucking cares? Get out of here. Right? That guy doesn't even have a seat at the table. Right? They might take him aside and have a conversation with him, but it's clear who's in charge. Right? Meanwhile, the capitalists, every single thing that they have to do, they've got to get permission from these five guys, or else they get defunded, and, oh, well, I'll run a counter campaign against you, and all this kind of dumb bullshit that goes on in American politics. Just this wasted productivity that exists because of the system of capital. That the system of capital is actually counterproductive. That you're constantly having to spend productive capacity on corruption. That's what you're constantly wasting your productive capacity on, is dealing with these frauds and losers and hacks and genocidal maniacs who just have the wealth of the nation, right? Because they're super smart. Yeah, that makes sense. Who cares? Like, it doesn't make sense to give $200 billion to somebody. It doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't care how smart they are. I don't give a shit if they're Tony fucking Stark, right? Like for God's sakes, like Age of Ultron should have shown everybody, like, oh yeah, a billionaire can make an error, right? So we should spread the wealth throughout the society and have an elected a group of people who are actually responsible and responsive to the needs of the people. But we don't have that. Right? So while we are trying to play catch up, we're going to constantly get hung up on ourselves. We're going to constantly get step on our own dicks. We're just going to constantly be in this state of just tripping over our own feet while China just strides ahead of us and just continues striding forward. And the entire rest of the world is going to look at China and be like, oh, that's how you build productive capacity. They're going to look at the West and they're going to see all of the infighting and all of the constant disruption and all of the ridiculous nonsense and all of the just like hang-ups and the billionaires just getting involved and constantly destroying anything that tries to get built, and the Republicans coming in and destroying what the Democrats are doing, and the Democrats coming in and destroying what the Republicans are doing, while the billionaires just chew at each other and eat each other. And everybody's going to look at that and be like, that is definitely not the way to run a complex society. And they're going to turn to China and be like, that is the way to do it. And they're going to model their governance structures, they're going to model their systems off of China. And they're going to constantly look to China and be like, that looks stable. It looks like they make clear decisions. It looks like when crises arise, the Chinese governance acts in a way that is in accordance to their legal structure. It looks stable. There's a very clear line to how you attain power in China. It doesn't seem to have any of this goonishness, any of this underhanded, constantly backbiting bullshit that goes on. That the politics that exists within China seems to exist within a structure that we are all interacting with, and in fact, that structure is benefiting us. Every single year, year over year, the people of China are getting better and are getting more out of their system, right? Whereas we are just constantly in this state of bickering and placating a group of total narcissistic psychopaths who shouldn't have assets in the first place, right? Who shouldn't be part of this system in the first fucking place. And yet there they are. And I don't understand why we put up with them. And so we're in this kind of moment of like, oh shit. Oh, you mean we actually have to make stuff and do stuff? We actually have to pay people? Oh my God. Right? So it's going to take us 10 years before we actually get that act together. We're going to go through this Republican moment where these Republicans just do everything they can to blow the place up and be a bunch of dumbasses. Right? And then and then maybe we'll have a little fractional moment where we actually attempt to move forward in a meaningful way. And by this time, China is just going to be like, boom, boom, just marching forward. Like, I'm not going to be too surprised at all if, like, when climate change starts to raise the water levels and things start to get out of hand here in the United States, China will literally just be like, oh yeah, we've already built the barriers. Like, we're well prepared for this. We've been building all of this stuff all along, while you guys have just been bitching and bickering about whether or not you should build a Mexican wall or something, right? Hail Tosis, good to see you. Yeah, hard power is no way to run an empire. Well, you can't do it. right? The U.S. longs for the days after World War II when every other manufacturer was destroyed. I believe the United States is trying to reproduce that time. Yeah, man, that's actually an interesting idea. Like, if you read the documents that come out of the Pentagon, that's more or less their strategy, right? Just blow up trade, blow up. The trouble is that they can't actually meaningfully get into China. That's the trouble. That's where the real manufacturing happens, right? That they can't actually start carpet bombing China. Like, that's not a real thing. I mean, they could, but, you know, I think the people of America themselves would start to revolt after San Francisco and Los Angeles were carpet bombed. Well, the U.S. does have good, like, propaganda systems, but those have failed, right? Like, the propaganda systems the United States used to have no longer really work, right? And I think more and more people are beginning to see how childish the United States has become. Like, all this superhero shit. Like, it's just baby talk, right? It's just baby talk at this point. And people understand it. Like, at first it was like, oh, okay, cool, superheroes, right? Let's do some superheroes. Okay, cool. But now it's everything. Now it's like literally the only thing that comes out of the United States is this superhero garbage. Uh, uh, and it just looks like a little kid, right? And you see, like, figures like Joe Biden and figures like Donald Trump. Like, these guys are demented old men. Like the United States looks like a country that is being run by like, that looks demented, right? And every single time the ruling class and people stand up and say anything, they end up sounding like just these absolute demented lunatics. Like, we've got oh, come on, I had it right here. Elon Musk, every single time he talks, he's revealing more and more to everybody just how stupid he is, right? For those wondering, says Elon Musk, I will pay over $11 billion in taxes this year. And so the absolute dipshit, total moron, Elon Musk, feels the need to confess in front of all of us that he basically pays almost no taxes. That he's just expecting us to go, oh, $11 billion is so much money. One person points out, that's 4.5% of your net worth. You paid 3.27% between 2014 and 2018, and no federal taxes at all in 2018. You made $36 billion in one day in 2021. Most U.S. people pay 10 to 37% in federal taxes and up to 13.3% in state taxes. Stop vying for sympathy from people who pay your fair share. Like, these guys are dumb, right? It's a dumb thing to stand up in public in front of everybody and admit that you pay almost no taxes, right? Like, just big number is big. And you got to really think, like, if you're living in India, if you're living in China, if you're living in these sorts of places, and you're seeing this is what the upper class, this is what the ruling class in America is actually saying out loud in front of everybody, right? Even if you're not one of these people that's like, that's unjust and oh, the injustice of it all, you've got to really recognize this is stupid, right? Like, this is really dumb. One of the things that I constantly talk about on this podcast is how smart I think the wealthy are in Canada. I think the wealthy are smarter in Canada. That David Thompson and the Thompson family, right? The wealthiest family for sure in Canada, are intelligent enough to realize that the smartest thing to do is stay out of the spotlight. And the smartest thing to do is really downplay your existence and really no high profile for us. We don't need to be famous. In fact, it's better if nobody knows who we are. It's better if everybody is just like, oh yeah, the Globe and Mail just exists. Yeah. Who owns it? Oh, we don't know. What? People own newspapers? Oh, okay. Forget about the fact that Globe and Mail is owned and operated by the Thompson Foundation and the Thompson family, right? Forget about how the Thompsons made their wealth. Forget about the fact that the existence of the Thompson family is the only evidence you really need to destroy the whole concept of the meritocracy. These people literally made their money by being monarchs. David Thompson's official title is the third Baron of Fleet. Like he's a literal lord, a literal monarchical lord that exists in our society who inherited $1 billion. Like what are you talking about? And yet nobody knows who this guy is, right? So there's something that you can look at and be like, oh, okay, like I don't agree with their existence, but at least they're not total fucking dim-witted morons. At least there's a sense of basic reasoning and basic intelligence that exists in their brain. Elon Musk, every single time he stands up, all he's doing is showing everybody how stupid he is and always has been, right? That his entire grift, his entire life has been, take this money and tell me how smart I am. That's it. And everybody's gone, okay, I'll take your money. You're super smart. Wow, this guy's the next Edison. Right? Meanwhile, it's literally everybody else that's doing the work. And Elon Musk is just like this front man that everybody just uses because he's a billionaire baby. So like we're like this society of overwhelming dimwits really trying to prove to everybody how smart we are, when in fact we're desperately stupid. Like we're desperately stupid, and the rest of the world is seeing through it. The rest of the world is calling us on our bluffs, and is really and it's going to get really, really clear, right? It's going to get really, really clear in these next 10 years how stupid we actually are. Because all we seem to be capable of doing is going to war to achieve nothing. Like Mikhail writes it here, 20 years to prove defeat in Afghanistan, 2 years in Ukraine, 2 months in Gaza, right? The strength of the U.S. NATO machine is weakening exponentially. Like that's just it. For a group of people who are dedicated to this idea that we can solve problems through war, we're sure good at losing wars, right? We're sure good at losing wars. Monsieur writes, I was watching something on Subversive History about how Israel was propping up and supporting fascist regimes in South America. Yeah, selling them napalm in Ecuador or something. Yeah. Like, Israel is a weapons manufacturer and a military base for the United States. That's the reason it exists. It exists for no other reason. Like, it's all of the couching, like Israel has the right to have a nation and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's sort of weird that they chose this place, like right in the heart of the Middle East, right? It's a military base. It's always been a military base. And so they manufacture weapons. And what do they do with it? They support genocidal regimes because they are a genocidal regime, right? I'm not one of these, Israel is the source of all evil. No, of course they're not the source of all evil. That would be Western capital, right? That would be Western capital for sure. Did you see that CNN caught Israel in a war crime? I mean, all you got to do is point a camera at these people at this point, right? It's not difficult to see how any of this works anymore, right? Like you really do have to kind of be dead-brained at this point to continue believing that this genocide is something other than what it is, right? Like you really have to like completely shut your brain down in order to call it to not be able to see what's going on. And now we're getting to a point where labor unions are making unprecedented calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, right? Unions for ceasefire now. Hundreds of unions and union locals have responded to a call from Palestinian labor unions and signed resolutions calling for a ceasefire. On December 1st, UAW, one of the largest U.S. unions, made history when it released a ceasefire statement. The United Electrical Workers, American Postal Workers Union, and the 1199 SEIU, the United Healthcare Workers East, and countless smaller unions have released similar statements. On January 22nd, the Service Employees International Union, the country's second largest public service employees union, called for a ceasefire. Unions have a long history of standing for progressive causes, from opposing fascism in World War II to mobilizing against apartheid South Africa and the Contra War. cited UAW Region 9A Director Brandon Mansilla. Over the decades, labor has stood up against World War I, the Vietnam War, and the Iraq War. Many organizers in the emerging anti-war movement after 9/11 understood the connections between U.S. militarism and the Israeli apartheid. That's labor historian Jeff Shirk in The Jacobin. Coalitions within the major unions have made efforts to support resolutions for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, including one from UAW Local 2865 in 2015, but most have been squashed by leadership. Like, this is actually what will change the discourse. This is actually what will make things shift, is shut the country down, right? Shut the country down, stop producing, stop manufacturing, stop working for these capitalists. Just stop. And once again, it's just more evidence that shows everybody very clearly that capitalism is a failed system, that it can't actually be negotiated with, that the only thing that it actually responds to is a cessation of production. And so this is the very definition of counterproductive, that while the United States is going to go through major general strikes and is going to go through major labor movement struggles, what's the rest of the world going to do? The rest of the world is going to continue advancing and just continue being like, oh yeah, you guys are going through a labor dispute. We literally have unions built, like workers' councils built into our constitutions. You guys should think of that, right? You guys should maybe build into the idea that workers' councils exist in your productive capacity to avoid this very thing from happening, so that the worker councils can get together and be like, these are our concerns. And then the managerial class will be like, well, those are your concerns, so we're going to respond to them, right? As opposed to what happens in the United States, which is the managerial class exists only to dispense the wishes of the capitalists and to do the bidding of the capitalists. And there is no system that actually responds to it. And the only system that does exist, which is the unions, well, the only thing that they can do at all to get any response whatsoever from the managerial or capitalist class is strike. It's the only thing that works. So how are we supposed to compete with the rest of the world as they stride forward? As they stride forward with ideas like, maybe we should listen to what the workers have to say, right? Maybe we should actually listen. I still believe the workers won't lead a general strike. They're too invested in the system, have to pay that rent. The precariat is the only hope. I mean, I think that the system of capital is going to break down so seriously that this idea that people are like you're going to have millions and millions of people who are going to get laid off and who are going to be going through like major dramatic strife, right? The idea, like they're going to be put into a position where they're not going to be able to pay their rent. That's the situation that's coming, right? Joe Anthony, don't know if I've ever seen you here before, Joe. Greetings and salutations to you. So good to see a like-minded soul. Well, I hope you're here to be beautiful, Joe. It's always nice to see a new person. A good opportunity to say like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bells and hit the whistles. Do all the stuff. If you'd like to donate to the Patreon, it's in the description. More importantly than that, please God, please tell people I exist. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your wives. Right? But good to see you, Joe. Mikhail writes, I think the weakening of the US dollar maybe finally makes it viable to invest in manufacturing goods for export. With the strong dollar, it made more sense to rely on imports instead of robust export. I mean, it makes a type of sense for the United States to just eat its free lunch, right? To give people paper dollars in exchange for goods. But it's a failing long-term strategy. Like, how much better would the United States have been post-World War II if it had just doubled down on manufacturing and worked in because what the United States did post-World War II is it worked to deindustrialize itself. It destroyed its own productive capacity, right? And it destroyed its own productive capacity with this logic, if you want to call it logic, of, oh, we can ship our manufacturing elsewhere, right? Give other people the means of production, build up their productive capacity, build up their productive forces, because that will give our capitalist class more money due to cheaper wages, right? And it'll lower the price, the cost of the good, and so we can sell it to other people at a cheaper rate, right? We'll undercut competitors, and so everybody will need to ship their productive force and their productive capacity elsewhere. And so we're going to build up the productive capacity of where? China. And so China goes from being like a fairly poor country, right? Before Mao, they literally were called the poor man of Asia. They were like the kicking boy of imperialism, right? And now they're the strongest economy on the planet. Why? Because we gave them our means of production, and we gave them our productive forces. We deindustrialized ourselves, and now we're playing catch up, right? We can't actually catch up. We're not going to catch up. Yeah, if we only collectively understood the power we have, but it's hard to organize millions, right? Yeah, there's truth to that, and it's also the truth that the system's not going to just let you organize. Right? It's not going to just sit there and be like, a bunch of people are organizing, right? It's not going to just watch that happen. It's going to do everything it can to destroy these kind of organizations and these kinds of organized movements. And so as we move forward, we've got to be aware and I think a big thing that we are fighting against, Joe, is that I think that there are a lot of people who still believe that the electoral system and the system of parliamentary politics that exists in Canada and in the United States is actually going to respond. I think that there is still this kind of vested interest and this vested idea that exists largely in the zeitgeist that we can resolve this through voting. That we just need to find the right candidate, and what we'll do is we'll coalesce under that candidate, and they'll go into the electoral system, and and all of this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the purpose of the electoral system. That the electoral systems were created by monarchists and slavers in order to maintain monarchies and slavery. That they don't exist to respond to the needs of the people, and they never did. The only time that they have responded to the people is when there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the streets surrounding the halls of power demanding a change, right? Another completely counterproductive system that exists within our structure, but that's how it actually works. That it's never been the case in our political life and in our political history that we've elected a person and that person has gone, that's a good idea, that the electorate is saying, let's enact that idea that the electorate is saying we should enact. It has always been the case that it has been millions of people on the streets calling for major reform, and that has been what has led to the change, and nothing else, and nothing else. So you can't even organize successfully because when you say organize, people hear vote for a politician. And I'm more or less of the opinion that it literally doesn't matter who the politician is. It's of no merit or interest whatsoever who the politician is, who's in power. That what matters is that you have 1 million people outside of that politician's door. That's what matters. And of course, if you really want to get bold and if you really want to get strong about it, right, it is about replacing that system entirely and redrawing the Constitution. That it has nothing to do anymore with tolerating this WWE politics that pretends like it's actually interested, like it's theater now at this point. It has the appearance of a political system, but it's not a political system. It's just WWE. And once the populace genuinely recognizes that and genuinely understands and ceases with this like, well, what are you going to do kind of mindset, and ceases with this idea that, well, what we'll do is we'll put in our own guy and that person will become the tool of capital, right? And just get into the mindset that the goal should be to literally surround the halls of power, to make it apparent and plain to not just the people running the theater, but also the people of the entire planet, that this system is not responding to its own people. And because that's how we actually got the New Deal. That's how the New Deal actually happened. It happened because there were millions of people standing outside of FDR's door calling for a revolution. And so FDR did the bidding of the capitalist class and started to capitulate power, with the understanding that the goal was capitulate what you need to capitulate, but we control the means of production. We own the businesses, and we are the ones who are actually running this show. So we'll accept a steeper tax rate. We'll accept social services coming in. We'll accept this kind of stuff so long as we still own the means of production. And that was the mistake that the people who were pushing the revolution forward under FDR made, is that they let the ruling class keep the means of production. And we shouldn't make that mistake again. That the next time there's millions of people surrounding the halls of power, the only concession that we should accept, that should make us let up, is that the workers own the means of production, and nothing short of that. Because if we don't, then all we're doing is cursing our children to needing to deal with these fucking psychopaths in their own lifetime. That the system of capital will just spawn out another group of psychopathic owners, and we'll need to get back in the streets and waste our productive force and waste our time and waste our effort dealing with these psychopathic billionaire capitalists and their ridiculous adherence to the idea that they should own the means of production when the workers should own the means of production and literally no one else. That the system of capital should be destroyed, and that is the only thing that should get us out of the streets. And until that happens, I'm going to continue doing this, because this is what I do, right? But I know exactly what will happen. We'll all get in the streets, and they'll give us a 1% raise increase, and we'll all just go home and be like, okay, we got our 1% raise, because we're not a very intelligent people. We think guys like Ben Shapiro are smart, right? Like, we think that like Jordan Peterson is smart. So pivoting from all of that, I do want to talk. I like talking about the Jordan Peterson catastrophe, because it really reveals how unintelligent we are. Right? We're a deeply, 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 deeply unintelligent people. Well, Joe, I even had a person in yesterday that was literally defending slavery. Like, literally defending slavery, saying he was a libertarian. And it's like, okay, so my opinion of libertarian now is that it's a defense of slavery at this point. Because like, these guys actually genuinely think that the way towards freedom is to destroy the government, to just sell yourself to capitalists, right? And that true freedom is selling yourself to the richest capitalist. Yeah, we can take the power from the ghouls and then give the power to other people. And then eventually we will have to beg them for what we need. That's change we can believe in. No, it's the workers that own the means of production, right? It's the workers themselves. And the concept being that if the workers are the ones that own the means of production, the people that actually own the productive force, the people who are actually doing the work, then the political class actually needs to respond to them, right? Like, right now, the political class does not respond to the working class. It is a total disconnect. There is no response whatsoever between the political class and the working class. Princeton literally did a study on it. That the Princeton study showed that there is no correlation between what the people in the electoral system want and what actually occurs. That the system is only responding to capital and the interests of capital. So it's a dictatorship of capital, right? And the goal of the communist project is the removal of the dictatorship of capital and the implementation of what's called the dictatorship of the proletariat. Just simply do not allow capitalists to rule at all. They're not allowed to be part of the system. So Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, for those of you who don't know, this guy has been ordered, now by a court, no less. So he was posting like cock milking porn, telling people to kill themselves on Twitter, doxing people on Twitter. And so the colleges of Ontario psychologists, right, said, okay, that's inappropriate and unprofessional, unbefitting our profession, right? Where we actually require like the trust of people in order to take us seriously, right? And to see one of our members going around acting this way in public, maybe not. So if you want to keep your license, we're gonna make you do we're gonna make you go through a seminar, right? We're gonna have you be re-educated, as Jordan Peterson puts it. It's literally like watching some videos, right? And of course, Peterson sues, and they go to court, and the court says, no, like a professional organization has the right to regulate its members. It's not a free speech issue. You don't have the right to be a psychologist, right? And if you want to abide by the rules, if you want to be a psychologist, then you need to abide by the rules that the College of the Ontario Psychologists put forward, right? That's pretty basic shit. And so Peterson, here's what he's tweeting about it. My re-education with @GadSad, he even sent it directly to them, right? So he's sending this tweet specifically to the people who are running the seminar. Is proceeding very well. I have learned to see true female beauty without bias and have attached a picture indicating that standard. This, of course, is a straight up dig on a trans professor, right? And if beautiful 50-year-old Professor Melody Weishart wants to compete against the 13-year-old girls he changes with, right? So misgendering, then more power to him. Oops, I meant her. Old habits die hard. Right? Like, this guy's trying to lose his license, right? Xana Darks writes, I'm facing a 6 months prison center in a detention camp in St. Petersburg for discrediting the armed forces of Russian Federation. Prayers up. I doubt it. Like, I just doubt that you would actually be posting on Twitch. What you got a good internet connection in a detention camp in St. Petersburg? They're just letting anybody watch anything in a detention camp in St. Petersburg? Your story kind of seems full of holes, my man. And my position, like, I think that Peterson is trying to lose his license. Like, very, very straightforwardly. This is a personal dig against the people who are actually running the seminar, very specifically using transphobic rhetoric in order to goad the administration into removing his license, right? And the removal of the license, I mean, he should lose his license. He should no longer be a practicing psychologist, absolutely, given some of the stuff that he's done and he's said, right? Like, I think that he's doing it because he's essentially turning his entire profession and his entire professional career into a commodity for him to make money. Like, he just wants to make a lot of money at this point. And if he can do that by losing his license, then he will. Because he's a fraud, right? He has no principles. And he certainly doesn't follow the principles that he actually says out loud. And it's staggering to me. It's staggering to me that there is anybody left who actually goes along with this guy. Like, that's what's so staggering to me. This guy, Xana, they exonerated me just now. And the first thing I did was jump into a Twitch stream. I told them I'll clean my room like Jordan Peterson said to. That's what did it, right? You said, Jordan Peterson said to clean my room, and so I'll do it. And so the Russian Federation was like, okay. Your story checks out, bud. Story totally checks out. Jordan B. Peterson trying to martyr himself. That's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to martyr himself to the cause of free speech, even though what's going on has nothing to do with free speech, right? You don't have the right to be a psychologist, right? To be a psychologist, to be any professional, you are expected to adhere to a code of conduct, right? And if you are going to act like a crazy person in public, that profession is going to say, no, you have to adhere to a code of conduct. And what's so baffling and what's so eye-opening is that there's huge segments of the population that don't seem to believe that a person needs to adhere to a code of conduct if they want to be part of a professional organization. Right? Like if you're a lawyer and you're telling people to kill themselves, and you're telling people to, and you're doxing people, right? People are going to complain, and you're going to go up for review. If you're a doctor, right? Like a medical doctor doing the same thing, putting cock milking porn on Twitter and all this kind of shit, people are going to complain, and you're going to go up for review. Why? Because professional organizations expect professional standards because they want to remain credible. They want to project out into the world an aura of credibility so people will trust what they say, right? And so if you're Jordan B. Peterson posting cock milking porn, doxing people, and telling people to kill themselves, right? The professor at the College of Ontario psychologists has every reason to put you up for review and ask you to take these seminars. And if while you are doing them, after having a literal court tell you that, yeah, of course, this is fine, after failing your appeal, right? Because the court's like, yeah, professional organizations have the right to regulate their professionals. You're still bitching about it the entire time, while actually goading, like trans baiting people. Like, you shouldn't be a psychologist, straight up, and you shouldn't be listened to as a serious person. Certainly not. June, good to see you. Who did he tell to kill themselves? He actually straight up told, I forget his name offhand, but he's a communist professor. He's a professor who teaches Marxism. It starts with a D. I'm completely blanking on his name. Ugh. That's going to bug me. Because he's actually like a really, really like excellent professor. He's an excellent professor of Marxism. And Peterson told him, he didn't say, go kill yourself. That's not what he said. But it was one of those kind of statements where it's like the only thing he could have meant was kill yourself, right? He did that thing that Peterson always does where he uses like 20 words to say 3 words. Not Wolf, not Richard Wolf. No. His name starts with a D. It's really going to bug me. It's really going to bug me. Hold on. Jordan Peterson's inappropriate tweets. Yeah. The National Post, to their credit, they actually published these tweets, right? No, not Astar Bear. Although I like Astar Bear. Although he's not very widespread. He seems very sort of niche, that fella. So these are the ones that they really want people to focus on, is like the political tweets, because he was tweeting at political people. Oh yeah. Sorry. Somebody posts, I disagree. Based on the record of human behavior, we are already overpopulating the small world. Any arguments I have heard for supporting such a large human population completely overlook the huge loss of species and ecosystems resulting from our self-absorbed attention. This is the idea of overpopulation. I don't go along with this idea of overpopulation. I think that we have lots of resources. The trouble is that we're mismanaging our resources and poisoning them through a system of capital. Right? That it seems pretty unlikely to me that the issue is overpopulation while we throw away 40% of our food, right? Like this to me seems to be kind of it's a way to distract from the real problem, which is capital. And Peterson's response, you're free to leave at any point. Right? Go kill yourself. Right? This is somebody just saying, go kill yourself. You're free to leave at any point. Is this your professional advice, Mr. Peterson? Should we leave 14-year-old girls alone in a room with you to give them advice, Mr. Peterson? Right? Hold on. The Freedom Convoy. They really, really want you to focus on the... Are they actually going to post the cock milking porn one? Because that's a great one. Like, that's a great one. Oh, yeah. The Sports Illustrated model, right? Sorry, not beautiful. No amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. Like, this is a fine opinion to have. You can look at this woman and think to yourself, I am not sexually attracted to that person. There's no problem with that, right? Like, it's, people are attracted to what they're attracted to, and that's fine, right? You don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to be a psychologist, right? If you want to share these opinions in public, right? If that's important to you, to let everybody know what your sexual preferences are and to let everybody know what gets your dick hard, right? You don't need to be a psychologist, right? Like, the College of Ontario Psychologists is trying to convince people to think that their institution is credible, right? Does this make you think that the institution is credible? Does this make you really go along with that idea? Yeah, such a fucking clown. Well, and that's just it. And then the Elliot Page shit, right? This Elliot Page nonsense. So look, the bottom line is that nobody has the right to be a psychologist. And that's the thing, is that Peterson is a clown, and he makes his entire organization look bad every time he fucking talks, right? Because he discredits his profession. Jimmy Cunningable, strong first comment, Jimmy. Glad you're here with that kind of... She's voluptuous goddess. Good for you, bud. Hey, man, whatever you like, you know? That's more or less my opinion on all of this shit. Like, it is a little bit weird that everybody is supposed to be constantly telling everybody what gets their dick hard. Like, what really gets my engine revving, right? Like we're supposed to build that into like our profiles now, and it's supposed to be like right out in front for everybody to be like, hey, my name's John, I like big titties. Like, or keep that shit to yourself. Like if you want to be gay or straight or if you are rather gay or straight or trans or any of that kind of stuff, great, fantastic. What I find to be kind of odd about the whole thing is how it has entranced us, how entranced we are by all of it. Like, trans people, the trans issue especially, like it genuinely affects like 5% of the population, if that. It's such a small percentage of the population that is actually being affected by this, that the idea that we are this entranced by it, that it has become this gigantic national issue where we are needing to vote on it, and people are voting for politicians based on this idea. Like, the rest of the world is looking at us like we're fucking lunatics, right? Like, my position is, yeah, okay, there's a trans person. Moving on, right? Like, it doesn't offend me or shock me. It doesn't fill me with any kind of trepidation. It turns out that the force of creation is more imaginative than you. That's all. Like, sure, I understand a person having a moment of like, oh, what? Right? And I'll even go so far to be like, I understand the person who's going to sit in a bar with their buddies and be like, whoa, can you believe? Oh, God. Right? Fine. And, oh, hey, look, there's a shitty stand-up comedian making shitty jokes about it. Okay. But now it's like voting, putting forward legislation, building political movements, creating cultural force and cultural icons, right? It just seems the stupidest shit of life. Well, and Melody seems lovely. Dude, you know what's so shameful about this comment, right? What's actually shameful, and he should be ashamed of this. So, this comment, if beautiful 50-year-old Professor Melody Weishart wants to compete against the 13-year-old girls he changes with, then more power to him. So, This comment is actually disgraceful because what this is referring to is that Melody Weishart did a swimming competition with against a group of 13-year-old girls, right? Because she's part of a swim group. It was one of these things that was just like done for fun. Right? It wasn't for like a medal or something. It wasn't like a genuine competition. It's so easy to see that what Melody wanted to do is like she's 50 and she's thinking to herself, you know, I've been training and swimming and all this because I wonder how I'll do against the younger girls. Hey, can I just do one swim just against the younger girls just to see how I'll do? And everybody was just like, sure, Melody, whatever. Right? This isn't going to blow up into a national scandal. Who gives a fuck? Right? That if Melody Weishart was just a straight woman by the name of Melody Weishart, everybody would have been like, oh yeah, just a 50-year-old woman wants to test her mettle against 13-year-old girls, okay. And moreover, if Melody Weishart was a straight man by the name of like Mel Weishart, and he was just like, yeah, I'm 50 and I want to check out how I'll do against these 13-year-old girls, everybody would have been like, fucking Mel, what a character. They would have filmed it on TikTok and been like, po, can you believe Mel? But it's only a scandal because Melody Weishart is a trans woman. That's the only thing that's making it a scandal at all. And that's shameful. That's transphobia in its most basic one-to-one form, right? That the only reason it's a scandal is because a trans person is involved in it. That if Melody was a straight woman, if Mel was a straight man, if Mel was a gay man, if Melody was a gay woman, everything would be fine and no one would give two shits. This would be a non-story. That the only reason it's a scandal is because Melody Weishart's a trans woman. And incidentally, she lost. Right? She went up against the 13-year-old girls. She didn't like do it to be like, ha, 13-year-old girls, I'm actually a big powerful man pretending to be a woman, and I destroyed you, which is always the narrative, right? No, she lost. Right? Why? Because she's 50. And these 13-year-old girls are better swimmers than her, obviously. Right? And she knew that she was going to lose. And the whole thing was just done for fun in the first place. Right? And then he finishes it up with, against the 13-year-old girls he changes with, which is Peterson pretending as though trans people are pedophiles, which is a very common thread for Nazis to use against their prey, which is what Peterson is doing here, right? Which is what makes it so disgraceful and disgusting. And I'll probably lodge a complaint against Peterson on this tweet alone, right? Like, this is disgusting, what he's done here. It is an attack on trans people, very obviously. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's attempting to lose his license on purpose. Right? Very, very clearly. Because he's a shameful idiot who doesn't believe in anything. Right? All he believes in is money. Right? He worships himself. He worships money. And he worships chaos. Like, that's the center of the core of capitalism and its decline. Right? And so this kind of transphobia, he's obviously using purposefully in order to lose his license intentionally. Because, like, what else could he be doing? Like, he's not a dumb person, right? His worldview is stupid as shit, but he understands what he's doing here, right? Like, he understands that, like, what it is to poke somebody in the eye. Like, he understands what that is, and so he's just gonna leave behind like a very sort of a pathetic legacy behind him, where he's actively discrediting himself on purpose for money, because he's popular, I guess. No. He calls it order, right? He calls it order, right? But what he's actually worshiping is chaos, right? Like, his idea of order is to subserviate yourself to the hierarchy being the system of capital, right? But the system of capital itself organizes itself, if you want to call this organization, under the concept of free market. So you are supposed to order yourself under a system that is itself chaotic, right? So he doesn't actually worship order. Like, Peterson is a chaos death knight of the highest order. He denies the existence of climate change. He subserviates himself to a system of capital where he's willing to literally destroy his entire legacy for money. Oh, I put order in quotation marks. You got me, June. You got me. You got me. Peterson talks too much for a guy that can't denounce the incel movement without crying. I don't actually mind Peterson crying, right? Like, that's fine. Like, I don't really have a problem with that. People get caught up in that kind of thing, I think. But like, it is just like his entire worldview is so utterly backwards, and it can be dismantled very easily. Like it's dismantled so easily that I'm kind of surprised people don't do it. Like, I'm just sort of surprised that people aren't just like, your whole concept of the meritocracy is obviously false, right? Like, his entire concept of the meritocracy is disprovable by just showing Elon Musk, literally just being like, that guy was born with $1 billion that his parents made in apartheid slave mines. What are you talking about? Like, where's your meritocracy? What are you talking about? The richest Canadian was born that way, with $1 billion. His name's David Thompson, right? What are you talking about? But it's just kind of shocking to me that nobody actually says to this guy, like, but what about facts and evidence? What about reality? It just kind of blows me away, and it just kind of shows you the decline in standards that exists in the society, and that nobody can actually put forward real, actual dissenting opinions. Nobody's actually allowed to stand up and point out like reality and facts, because pointing out reality and facts means pointing at the rich and going, these guys are obviously dumb, like they're obviously frauds and they shouldn't be part of the system. Like, why is it that Galen Weston has control over the food distribution network at all? What are you even talking about? Like, some inheritor of wealth who literally just got born a billionaire now has control of pricing of our food. No? Like, what are you, stupid? And it turns out that yes, most of us are very, very stupid. Like, we're just completely invested in the idea that Galen Weston should own that, because he earned it by being born that way. Meritocracy, right? So I'm just blown away that more people don't just constantly dunk on Peterson in public, because it's just like easy, right? For all his verboseness and all of the shit that he says, it's so obvious to point out and be like, but none of that's true. Like, obviously, like, just so clearly and obviously false. Why are you building an ideology on this idea that's obviously fake? Yeah, the divine right of billionaires, exactly. I think one of the arguments for anarchism is that regardless of what you think is called order, the order is chaos, and chaos is order. Order is chaos, and chaos is order. No, I think it's possible to build like an actual ordered system. Like, what matters is if the systems you have respond to the people who are supposedly involved in it, right? Like, that's what really matters. Like, that, like, if you have a system that says this is what we're going to do, and then implements that plan in order to do the thing that it says it's going to do, and everybody involved in it is going, that's the thing that we'd like it to do, and then it does the thing that it says it's going to do, regardless of the outcome, right? Regardless of like which way it goes, maybe it will work and maybe it won't work, right? In which case, if it doesn't work, the system should probably look at it and be like, okay, why isn't that working? But even if it does work, the system should look at it and be like, why is it working? And maybe we can do more of that, right? I would describe that to be very orderly. We said we're going to do it. We planned on doing it. We did do it. And then we analyzed whether or not it worked. That to me seems like order, right? It's not how the system of capital works, right? It's not what we do. That we basically just say, it's a free-for-all. Everybody just do what they're going to do. chaos theory in math seems like more of the philosophy that regardless of what seems like chaos, there is order there. Like, I do tend to believe that when it comes to nature, when it comes to like mathematics, when it comes to that kind of stuff, that like the human perspective is not going to be able to sort out what is order or what is chaos. It's just not. We don't have the perspective to be able to make that determination. Like we're not big. We are not the scope and scale of the universe. And so we can come up with kind of weird ideas. Oh, I do want to show this video. Here, I'm going to try something. Let me know if this audio actually works. So if you can't hear this, let me know.
Let me get this straight, Yelda. So we are bombing one of the poorest countries in the world that has been under a humanitarian blockade. There has been famine. These people have been decimated. And we are bombing them because a couple of guys in dinghies in support for the Palestinians who are having a genocide committed against them, they're objecting to that, and we're bombing them. Come on now. I mean, this is just an insane world for us to even think. I'm so sorry your Amazon packages are delayed. I really am. Like, I wish mine came on time. But, you know, genocide, guys, genocide. There are 2 mothers a day dying in Gaza right now. It's 109 days into a conflict in which a humanitarian crisis has been declared to the world day in, day out.
So that video's been circulating a lot. I just think that it's great. I'm sorry your Amazon packages are delayed. I think that's my favorite statement of that this young lady made. Right? I'm sorry your Amazon packages are delayed. Because it actually does kind of capture the American spirit and the American ethos, right? Oh, this minor inconvenience to me. This minor inconvenience to me is more important than the literal genocide that's unfolding in front of our faces. That, like, literally we've got children and mothers being killed in Gaza, right? Israel has dropped almost 30,000 bombs and shells on Gaza in 100 days. 8 times more than the U.S. aimed at Iraq in 6 years of war. Israel destroyed nearly twice the number of buildings in northern Gaza in 7 weeks than it destroyed in Aleppo in 3 years. Right? Like, and then people turn around and pretend like this isn't a genocide. Like, that's the craziest part about it, is seeing that genocide denial has become very fashionable. Elon Musk denies it. Ben Shapiro, Destiny, right? You've got major voices like the Biden administration, the Republicans. Like, what organization actually says out loud, yeah, this is genocide, right? Yeah. This blockade is wreaking havoc. There's a very good reason for it. Yeah, if you take a look at the full video of that young lady, she goes on to say just that. That if you actually want to end the blockade, you should call for a ceasefire. That'll end your blockade, right? And in the meantime, Hamas itself has released a document. Why we carried out Al-Aqsa flood operation. Summary with a PDF. The document was released in both Arabic and English languages by the Hamas Media Office. It offers a rare insight into the reasons that led the Palestinian resistance leaders to carry out a major resistance operation on October 7th, in addition to what actually transpired on that day. The document starts by addressing our steadfast Palestinian people. You know what, man? I think... Hold on. This is 18 pages. This is 18 pages, and honestly, a lot of these pages, you know what, man? Let's just fucking do it. This is going to be great. I'm actually looking forward to this. Here we go. From Hamas itself. From the belly of the beast. From the evil dark forces of Hamas. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Our steadfast Palestinian people, the Arab and Islamic nations, the free peoples worldwide and those who advocate for freedom, justice, and human dignity. In light of the ongoing Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and as our people continue their battle for independence, dignity, and breaking free from the longest ever occupation during which they have drawn the finest displays of bravery and heroism in confronting the Israeli murder machine and aggression, we would like to clarify to our people and the free peoples of the world the reality of what happened on October 7th, the motives behind, its general context related to the Palestinian cause, as well as a refutation to the Israeli allegations and to put the facts into perspective. Why Operation Al-Aqsa Flood? Hey, Bread Bunny, how you doing? Number 1. The battle of the Palestinian people against occupation and colonialism did not start on October 7th, but started 105 years ago, including 30 years of British colonialism and 75 years of Zionist occupation. In 1918, the Palestinian people owned 98.5% of the Palestinian land and represent 92% of the population on the land of Palestine, while the Jews, who were brought to Palestine in mass immigration campaigns in coordination between the British colonial authorities and the Zionist movement, managed to seize control of not more than 6% of the lands in Palestine and to be 31% of the population prior to 1948, when the Zionist entity was made announced on the historic land of Palestine. At that time, the Palestinian people were denied from the right to self-determination, and the Zionist gangs engaged in an ethnic cleansing campaign against the Palestinian people aimed at expelling them from their lands and areas. As a result, the Zionist gangs seized control by force of 77% of the land of Palestine, where they expelled 57% of the population of Palestine and destroyed over 500 Palestinian villages and towns, and committed dozens of massacres against the Palestinians, which all culminated in the establishment of the Zionist entity in 1948. Moreover, in continuation of the aggression, the Israeli forces in 1967 occupied the rest of Palestine, including the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and Jerusalem, in addition to Arab territories around Palestine. 2. Over these long decades, the Palestinian people suffered all forms of oppression, injustice, expropriation of their fundamental rights, and the apartheid policies. The Gaza Strip, for example, suffered as of 2007 from a suffocating blockade over 17 years, which turned it to be the largest open-air prison in the world. The Palestinian people in Gaza also suffered from 5 destructive wars, aggressions all of which Israel was the offending party. The people in Gaza in 2018 also initiated the Great March of Return, demonstrations to peacefully protest the Israeli blockade, their misery, humanitarian conditions, and to demand their right to return. However, the Israeli occupation forces responded to these protests with brutal force, by which 360 Palestinians were killed and 19,000 others were injured, including over 5,000 children in a matter of months. According to official figures, in the period between January 2000 and September 2023, the Israeli occupation killed 11,299 Palestinians and injured 156,768 others. The great majority of them were civilians. Unfortunately, the U.S. administration and its allies did not pay attention to the suffering of the Palestinian people over the past years, but provided cover to the Israeli aggression. They only lamented the Israeli soldiers who were killed on October 7th, even without seeking the truth of what happened, and wrongfully walked behind the Israeli narrative in condemning an alleged targeting of Israeli civilians. The U.S. administration provided the financial and military support to the Israeli occupation massacres against the Palestinian civilians and brutal aggression on the Gaza Strip. And still, the U.S. officials continued to ignore what the Israeli occupation forces commit in Gaza of mass killing. The Israeli violations and brutality were documented by many UN organizations and international human rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and even documented by Israeli human rights groups. However, these reports and testimonies were ignored, and the Israeli occupation is yet to be held accountable. For example, on October 29, 2021, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilead Erdan, insulted the UN system by tearing up a report for the UN Human Rights Council during an address at the General Assembly, and threw it in a dustbin before leaving the podium. Yet, he was appointed in the following year, 2022, to the post of Vice President of the UN General Assembly. The U.S. administration and its Western allies have always been treating Israel as a state above the law. They provide it with the needed cover to maintain prolonging the occupation and cracking down the Palestinian people, and also allowing Israel to exploit such situation as to expropriate further Palestinian lands and to Judaize their sanctities and holy sites. Despite the fact that the UN had issued more than 900 resolutions over the past 75 years in favor of the Palestinian people, Israel rejected to abide by any of these resolutions, and the U.S. veto was always present at the UN Security Council to prevent any condemnation to Israel's policies and violations. That's why we see the U.S. and other Western countries complicit and partners to the Israeli occupation in its crimes and in the continued suffering of the Palestinian people. As for the peaceful settlement process, despite the fact that the Oslo Accords, signed in 1993 with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, stipulated the establishment of a Palestinian independent state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Israel systematically destroyed every possibility to establish the Palestinian state through a wide campaign of settlements, construction, and Judaization of the Palestinian lands in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. The backers of the peace process after 30 years realize that they have reached an impasse, and that such process had catastrophic results on the Palestinian people. The Israeli officials confirmed at several occasions their absolute rejection to the establishment of a Palestinian state. Just 1 month before Operation Al-Aqsa flood, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presented a map of a so-called New Middle East, depicting Israel stretching from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, including the West Bank and Gaza. The entire world at that UN General Assembly's podium were silent towards his speech full of arrogance and ignorance towards the rights of the Palestinian people. After 75 years of relentless occupation and suffering, and after failing all initiatives for liberation and return to our people, and also after the disastrous results of the so-called peace process, what did the world expect from the Palestinian people to do in response to the following? The Israeli Judaization plans to the Blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque, its temporal and spatial division attempts, as well as the intensification of the Israeli settlers' incursions into the Holy Mosque. The practices of the extremist and right-wing Israeli government, which is practically taking steps towards annexing the entire West Bank and Jerusalem into the so-called Israeli sovereignty, amid plans on the Israeli official table to expel Palestinians from their homes and areas. The thousands of Palestinian detainees in Israeli jails who are experiencing deprivation of their basic human rights, as well as assaults and humiliation under direct supervision of the Israeli fascist minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. The unjust air, sea, and land blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip over 17 years. The expansion of the Israeli settlements across the West Bank in an unprecedented level, as well as the daily violence perpetuated by settlers against the Palestinians and their properties. The 7 million Palestinians living in extreme conditions in refugee camps and other areas who wish to return to their lands and who were expelled 75 years ago. The failure of the international community and the complicit of superpowers to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. What was expected from the Palestinian people after all of that? To keep waiting and to keep counting on the helpless UN, or to take the initiative in defending the Palestinian people, land rights, and sanctities, knowing that the Defense Act is a right enshrined in international laws, norms, and conventions. Proceeding from the above, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7th was a necessary step and a normal response to confront all Israeli conspiracies against the Palestinian people and their cause. It was a defensive act in the frame of getting rid of the Israeli occupation, reclaiming the Palestinian rights, and on the way for liberation and independence like all peoples around the world did. The events of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood and responses to the Israeli allegations. In light of the Israeli fabricated accusations and allegations over Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7th and its repercussions, we in the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, clarify the following. Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7th targeted the Israeli military sites and sought to arrest the enemy soldiers to pressure on the Israeli authorities to release the thousands of Palestinians held in Israeli jails through a prisoner exchange deal. Therefore, the operation focused on destroying the Israeli army's Gaza division, the Israeli military sites stationed near the Israeli settlements around Gaza. Avoiding harm to civilians, especially children, women, and elderly people, is a religious and moral commitment by all the Al-Qassam Brigade's fighters. We reiterate that the Palestinian resistance was fully disciplined and committed to the Islamic values during the operation, and that the Palestinian fighters only targeted the occupation soldiers and those who carried weapons against our people. In the meantime, the Palestinian fighters were keen to avoid harming civilians, despite the fact that the resistance does not possess precise weapons. In addition, if there was any case of targeting civilians, it happened accidentally and in the course of the confrontation with the occupation forces. Since its establishment in 1987, the Hamas movement committed itself to avoiding harm to civilians. After Zionist criminal Baruch Goldstein in 1994 committed a massacre against the Palestinian worshippers in the Al-Ibrahimi Mosque in occupied Hebron City, the Hamas movement announced an initiative to avoid civilians the brunt of fighting by all parties. But the Israeli occupation rejected it, and even did not give any comment on it. The Hamas movement also repeated such calls several times, but received by a deaf ear from the Israeli occupation, which continued its deliberate targeting and killing of Palestinian civilians. Maybe some faults happened during Operation Al-Aqsa Flood's implementation due to the rapid collapse of the Israeli security and military system, and the chaos caused along the border areas with Gaza. As attested by many, the Hamas movement dealt in a positive and kind manner with all civilians who had been held in Gaza, and sought from the earliest days of the aggression to release them. And that's what's happened during the week-long humanitarian truce, where those civilians were released in exchange of releasing Palestinian women and children from Israeli jails. What the Israeli occupation promoted of allegations that the Al-Qassam brigades on October 7th were targeting Israeli civilians are nothing but complete lies and fabrications. The source of these allegations is the Israeli official narrative, and no independent source provided any of them. It is a well-known fact that the Israeli official narrative had always been sought to demonize the Palestinian resistance, while also legalizing its brutal aggression on Gaza. Here are some details that go against the Israeli allegations. Video clips taken on that day, October 7th, along with the testimonies by Israelis themselves that were released later showing that the Al-Qassam Brigade's fighters didn't target civilians, and many Israelis were killed by the Israeli army and police due to their confusion. It has also been firmly refuted the lie of the 40 beheaded babies by the Palestinian fighters, and even Israeli sources deny this lie. Many of the Western media agencies unfortunately adopted this allegation and promoted it. The suggestion that the Palestinian fighters committed rape against Israeli women was fully denied, including by the Hamas movement. A report by the Mondawis News website on December 1st, 2023, among others, said there is a lack of any evidence of mass rape. allegedly perpetrated by Hamas members on October 7th, and that Israel used such allegation to fuel the genocide in Gaza. According to two reports by the Israeli Yedioth Aharonoth newspaper on October 10th and the Haaretz newspaper on November 18th, many Israeli civilians were killed by an Israeli military helicopter, especially those who were in the Nova Music Festival near Gaza, where 364 Israeli civilians were killed. The two reports said the Hamas fighters reached the areas of the festival without any prior knowledge of the festival, where the Israeli helicopter opened fire on both the Hamas fighters and the participants in the festival. The Yedioth Aharonoth also said the Israeli army, to prevent further infiltrations from Gaza and to prevent any Israelis being arrested by the Palestinian fighters, struck over 300 targets in areas surrounding the Gaza Strip. Other Israeli testimonies confirmed that the Israeli army raids and soldiers' operations killed many Israeli captives and their captors. The Israeli occupation army bombed the houses in the Israeli settlements where Palestinian fighters and Israelis were inside, in a clear application of the Israeli army's notorious Hannibal Directive, which clearly says that better a dead civilian hostage or soldier than taken alive, to avoid engaging in a prisoner swap with the Palestinian resistance. Furthermore, the occupation authorities revised the number of their killed soldiers and civilians from 1,400 to 1,200, after finding that 200 burnt corpses had belonged to the Palestinian fighters, who were killed and mixed with Israeli corpses. This means that the one who killed the fighters is the one who killed the Israelis, knowing that only the Israeli army possesses military planes that killed, burned, and destroyed Israeli areas on October 7th. The Israeli heavy aerial raids across Gaza that led to the death of nearly 60 Israeli captives also prove that the Israeli occupation does not care about the life of their captives in Gaza. It is also a matter of fact that a number of Israeli settlers and settlements around Gaza were armed and clashed with Palestinian fighters on October 7th. Those settlers were registered as civilians, while the fact is they were armed men fighting alongside the Israeli army. When speaking about Israeli civilians, it must be known that conscription applies to all Israelis above the age of 18. Males who served 32 months of military service and females who served 24 months, where all can carry and use arms. This is based on the Israeli security theory of an armed people, which turned the Israeli entity into an army with a country attached. The brutal killing of civilians is a systemic approach of the Israeli entity, and one of the means to humiliate the Palestinian people. The mass killing of Palestinians in Gaza is a clear evidence of such approach. The Al Jazeera news channel said in a documentary that in 1 month of the Israeli aggression on Gaza, the daily average killing of Palestinian children in Gaza was 136, while the average of children killing in Ukraine in the course of the Russian-Ukrainian war was 1 child every day. Those who defend the Israeli aggression do not look at the events in an objective manner, but rather go to justify the Israeli mass killing of Palestinians by saying there would be casualties among civilians when attacking the Hamas fighters. However, they would not use such assumptions when it comes to the Al-Aqsa flood event on October 7th. We are confident that any fair and independent inquiries will prove the truth of our narrative and will prove the scale of lies and misleading information on the Israeli side. This also includes the Israeli allegations regarding the hospitals in Gaza that the Palestinian resistance used them as command centers, an allegation that was not proven and was refuted by reports of many Western press agencies. Towards a transparent international investigation. Palestine is a member state of the International Criminal Court, and it acceded to its Rome Statute in 2015. When Palestine asked for investigation into Israeli war crimes committed into its territories, it was faced by Israeli intransience and rejection, and threats to punish the Palestinians for their request to the ICC. It also, unfortunate to mention, that there were great powers which claimed to be holding values of justice, completely sided with the occupation narrative, and stood against the Palestinian moves in the international justice system. These powers want to keep Israel as a state above the law and to ensure it escapes liability and accountability. We urge these countries, especially the US administration, Germany, Canada, and the UK, if they are meant for justice to prevail as they claim, they ought to announce their support for the course of the investigation in all crimes committed in occupied Palestine, and to give full support for the international courts to effectively do their job. Despite having doubts from these countries to stand by justice, we still urge the ICC prosecutor and his team to immediately and urgently come to occupied Palestine to look into the crimes and violations committed there, rather than merely observing the situation remotely or being subject to the Israeli restrictions. In December 2022, when the UN General Assembly passed a resolution seeking opinion of the International Court of Justice on the legal consequences of Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories, those few countries who back Israel announced their rejection to the move that was approved by nearly 100 countries. And when our people and their legal and rights groups sought to pursue prosecutions against the Israeli war criminals in front of the European countries' courts through the system of universal jurisdiction, the European regimes obstructed the moves in favor of the Israeli war criminals to remain running free. The events of October 7th must be put in its broader context, and that all cases of struggle against colonialism and occupation in our contemporary time be evoked. These experiences of struggle show that in the same level of oppression committed by the occupier, there would be an equivalent response by the people under occupation. The Palestinian people and the peoples across the world realize the scale of lies and deception these governments that back the Israeli narrative practice in their attempts to justify their blind bias and to cover the Israeli crimes. These countries know the root causes of the conflict, which are the occupation and the denial of the right of the Palestinian people to live in dignity on their lands. These countries show no interest towards the constitution of the unjust blockade on millions of Palestinians in Gaza, and also show no interest towards the thousands of Palestinian detainees in Israeli jails, held under conditions where their basic rights are mostly denied. We hail the free people of the world from all religions, ethnicities, and backgrounds who rally in all capitals and cities worldwide to voice their rejection to the Israeli crimes and massacres, and to show their support for the right of the Palestinian people and their just cause. A reminder to the world: who is Hamas? The Islamic resistance movement Hamas is a Palestinian Islamic national liberation and resistance movement. Its goal is to liberate Palestine and confront the Zionist project. Its frame of reference is Islam, which determines its principles, objectives, and means. Hamas rejects the persecution of any human being or the undermining of his or her rights on nationalist, religious, or sectarian grounds. Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. Yet, it is the Zionists who constantly identify Judaism and the Jews with their own colonial project and illegal entity. The Palestinian people have always stood against oppression, injustice, and the committing of massacres against civilians, regardless of who commits them. And based on our religious and moral values, we clearly stated our rejection to what the Jews were exposed to by the Nazi Germany. Here, we remind that the Jewish problem in essence was a European problem, while the Arab and Islamic environment was, across history, a safe haven to the Jewish people and other peoples of other beliefs and ethnicities. The Arab and Islamic environment was an example of coexistence, cultural interaction, and religious freedoms. The current conflict is caused by Zionist aggressive behavior and its alliance with the Western colonial powers. Therefore, we reject the exploitation of the Jewish suffering in Europe to justify the oppression against our people in Palestine. The Hamas movement, according to international law and norms, is a national liberation movement that has clear goals and mission. It gets its legitimacy to resist the occupation from the Palestinian right to self-defense, liberation, and self-determination. Hamas has always been keen to restrict its fight and resistance with the Israeli occupation on the occupied Palestinian territory. Yet, the Israeli occupation did not abide by that and committed massacres and killings against the Palestinians outside Palestine. We stress that resisting the occupation with all means, including the armed resistance, is a legitimized right by all norms, divine religions, the international laws including the Geneva Convention and its first additional protocol and the related UN resolution. The UN General Assembly Resolution 3236, adopted by the 29th session of the General Assembly on November 22, 1974, which affirmed the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people in Palestine, including the right to self-determination and the right to return to their homes and property from where they were expelled, displaced, and uprooted. Our steadfast Palestinian people and their resistance are waging a heroic battle to defend their land and national rights against the longest and brutalist colonial occupation. The Palestinian people are confronting an unprecedented Israeli aggression that committed heinous massacres against Palestinian civilians. Most of them were children and women. In the course of the aggression on Gaza, the Israeli occupation deprived our people in Gaza of food, water, medicine, and fuel, and simply deprived them from all means of life. In the meantime, the Israeli warplane savagely struck all Gaza infrastructure and public buildings, including schools, universities, mosques, churches, and hospitals, in a clear sign of ethnic cleansing aimed at expelling the Palestinian people from Gaza. Yet, the backers of the Israeli occupation did nothing but kept the genocide ongoing against our people. The Israeli occupation's use of self-defense pretext to justify its oppression against the Palestinian people is a process of lie, deception, and turning the facts. The Israeli entity has no right to defend its crimes and occupation, but the Palestinian people who have such right to oblige the occupier to end the occupation. In 2004, the International Court of Justice gave an advisory opinion in the case concerning the legal consequences of the construction of a wall in the occupied Palestinian territory, which stated that Israel, the brutal occupying force, cannot rely on a right of self-defense to build such a wall on Palestinian territory. Furthermore, Gaza, under the international law, is still an occupied land. Thus, the justifications for waging the aggression on Gaza is baseless and lacks its legal capacity, as well as lacks the essence of the self-defense idea. Fifth, what is needed? Occupation is occupation, no matter how it describes or names itself, and remains a tool to break the will of the people and keep oppressing them. On the other side, the experiences of the peoples and nations across history on how to break away from occupation and colonialism confirm that the resistance is the strategic approach and the only way to liberation and ending the occupation. Have any nation been liberated from occupation without struggle, resistance, or sacrifice? The humanitarian, ethical, and legal imperatives necessitate all countries around the world to back the resistance of the Palestinian people, not to collude against it. They are supposed to confront the occupation crimes and aggressions, as well as to support the struggle of the Palestinian people to liberate their lands and to practice their right to self-determination, like all peoples across the globe, based on what we call for the following. Number 1, the immediate halt of the Israeli aggression on Gaza, the crimes and ethnic cleansing committed against the entire Gaza population, to open the crossings and allow the entry of the humanitarian aid into Gaza, including the reconstruction tools. 2. To hold the Israeli occupation legally accountable for what it caused of human suffering towards the Palestinian people, and to charge it for the crimes against civilians, infrastructure, hospitals, educational facilities, mosques, and churches. 3. The support of the Palestinian resistance in the face of the Israeli occupation with all possible means as a legitimized right under the international law and norms. 4. We call upon the free peoples across the world, especially those nations who were colonized and realized the suffering of the Palestinian people, to take serious and effective positions against the double standard policies adopted by powers and countries that backed the Israeli occupation. We call on these nations to initiate a global solidarity movement with the Palestinian people and to emphasize the values of justice and equality and the right of the peoples to live in freedom and dignity. 5. The superpowers, especially the US, the UK, and France, among others, must stop providing the Zionist entity with cover from accountability, and to stop dealing with it as a country above the law. Such unjust behavior by these countries allowed the Israeli occupation over 75 years to commit the worst crimes ever against the Palestinian people, land, and sanctities. We urge the countries across the globe today and more than ever before to uphold their responsibilities towards the international law and the relevant UN resolutions that call for ending the occupation. 6. We categorically reject any international or Israeli projects aimed at deciding the future of Gaza that only serve to prolong the occupation. We stress that the Palestinian people have the capacity to decide their future and to arrange their internal affairs, and thus, no party in the world has the right to impose any form of guardianship on the Palestinian people or decide on their behalf. 7. We urge for standing against the Israeli attempts to cause another wave of expulsion or a new Nakba to the Palestinians, especially in the lands occupied in 1948 and the West Bank. We stress that there will be no expulsion to Sinai or Jordan or any other place, and if there is any relocation to the Palestinians, it will be towards their homes and areas they were expelled from in 1948, as affirmed by many UN resolutions. 8. We call for keeping the popular pressure around the world until ending the occupation. We call for standing against the normalization attempts with the Israeli entity and for a comprehensive boycott to the Israeli occupation and its backers. That's a powerful document. That is a powerful document. June. Evil tankies making me put things in their historical context. Yeah, guys, didn't you know history started on October 7th? That's the beginning of history, right? You're not supposed to remember what happened even a day before October 7th, right? Yeah, methane, and now we're all on yet another secret government list somewhere. I think it's finished for us, right, methane? Like, I think by now. Yeah. Secret government list compiled by genocide nihilists. Yeah, accomplices, in fact. Yeah. Joe says they always say it's the Palestinians refusing peace offers. Of course, genocide denialists will say that, right? Like, because if I walked up to you, right, beat you up and robbed you, and then said, hey, let's just drop it. Let's let bygones be bygones. What do you say? Right? Would you accept that? Right? And if you said, like, hey, can I have my money back, at least? Right? And I said no. And then you would obviously say, well, no, I don't accept that. And then I go, classic, you don't want to accept a peace deal. Right? Is that something that's supposed to be taken seriously? Is that a serious position that should be taken seriously? Yeah, they offer them an olive branch, which they have set on fire. But it's all fake, right? It's all phony. Like Netanyahu has said as much himself. Like he said straight out that the peace deal that was being brokered by the Clinton administration, that he had no intention of doing that. That he was interested in torpedoing that. Like he said it outright. So like, Content writes, if this is Hamas's actual words, they are speaking my mind. Yeah. I think it's always good. One of the things that really convinced me that you should always actually read the documents that are put out, even if you think that this is your enemy, right? Even if you think that this is your enemy, you should still read this stuff and you should still know it, right? Like the Western powers do not want you to read the words of their enemies, right? And they want you to remain dim-witted and they want you to remain illiterate. They don't want you to actually hear what these people are saying. They don't want you to read it. They don't want you to know anything about it. And they'll even go so far as to say, oh, it's treasonous to even read the words of the enemy, which is the dumbest thing ever. Right? If you are actually right, if you are actually on the side of righteousness, and these people are actually evil, then, well, read their words. Read the words of the evil people then, so that you can see and understand. Right? But you find out pretty quickly, like just basic cursory history lesson should show you pretty clearly that Israel is a colonial project, right? If you are familiar with the concept of colonialism at all, it should be pretty obvious what this is. And it should be pretty obvious that standing on the side of Israel is standing on the side of a colonial project that is dedicated to the extermination of the Palestinian people. And so to hear it from their own mouths while it is ongoing, I think is important. Yeah, self-defense is defending your home, not leveling the neighborhood. Yeah. Methane writes, well, that all sounds perfectly reasonable to me. I'm surprised at how thorough it is on the media, how things are made and spun. A good document to send to anyone who asks if I condemn Hamas. Yeah, like, I mean, I sort of said this facetiously at the beginning, like, but it has actually become like my perspective, which is like, imagine Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star, and then people going, oh, but you condemn the rebellion. Like, no. Like, no, I like Luke Skywalker. I think that he was right to blow up the Death Star. Right? Like, oh, what? Oh my God! All the stormtroopers. Oh my goodness! Think about the lost productivity. Like, no, we understand as people that oppressed people have the right to fight back against their assailants. We understand that on a very basic level. People have the right to use violence in self-defense and not be punished for it, right? That if somebody walks up to you and starts to try to rob you or beat you up and you fight back, you're not going to go to jail for it, right? You're not going to get punished for it because self-defense is an inherent right. Everybody has the right to defend themselves. And it's true of nations, right? That once you understand that what Israel is a colonizing force that is exterminating Palestinians, well, then gone is this whole concept. Israel has the right to defend itself? What are you talking about? Israel's the aggressor. That would be like saying, I can walk over to somebody and start to beat the shit out of them. And then if they fight back, I can say, oh, I've got the right to defend myself against this guy that's fighting back against me. Like, yeah, which is why they are destroying the franchise of Star Wars with moral relativism. I think it's important for the death cult to destroy and like they are actively destroying any franchise that has any positions. And the most obvious one is Star Trek. Like, if I was to sit down and do like a really actual, serious, deep analysis of the destruction of important franchises of the past, I think the destruction of Star Trek is probably the most egregious and obvious. That Star Trek was about the advancement of the species, right? The advancement of the species past and creating a post-capitalist society, right? Like there are many episodes of Star Trek, and then there's explicit episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation that are explicit in its statement that we are a post-capitalist society, that we have gone beyond sort of the petty desires of capitalism and created a new mode of thinking about our lives and thinking about who we are. And that very steadily degrades from being a revolutionary concept of a new form of organizing ourselves, and it fades back into capitalist realism, which begins to encroach in Deep Space Nine, right? Where it's no longer that we are free from capitalism, but that capitalism is a natural force, right? So it exists and persists in the universe, even though we try to deny it. And the only thing that you can do against it is just unionize, right? Like that's the limit. Not full-scale revolution, not get rid of the owners, right? Just unionize against the owners so that you can negotiate with them. That's the level that we're allowed to move up to. And so that's the Deep Space Nine regression. And then finally, you get into Voyager, and the entire conversation is done. It's completely non-existent. Replaced with this sort of faux, pathetic spiritualism in the concept, in the character of Chakotay and Kai, where they're not. It's not about class relations anymore. It's just about our relation to the universe through this sort of fake spiritual bullshit. That it's actually very racist. Like the character of Chakotay is actually deeply insulting, not just to First Nations people, but like to just people. Like it's just fucking insulting. A guy who's literally doing like space flight is like, find your spirit animal. Like fuck off. And then modern visions of Star Trek have basically just distilled it of all of that. That it's all gone. It's all basically just like nostalgia porn. If there is even an attempt to make any kind of statement, it's very vague, not particularly well defended or argued, and so they've basically destroyed the franchise. Outside of people who are like trying to grab onto some kind of nostalgic idea of what it used to be, when everybody should just go watch Star Trek: The Next Generation again, right? Actually go and watch Star Trek: The Next Generation again. You'll be like, oh shit, I can't believe this was on television in the 90s, right? In the 90s, there was a show on television that was legitimately making the case that we can advance past capitalism. And that capitalism is holding us back, right? Well, what was frustrating about Janeway more than anything is that she never would have been promoted to the position of captain. Like, she just was wishy-washy. She didn't really understand. She didn't really have like positions, right? She was just kind of ad hoc making things up as she was going on. They did this annoying thing, which I thought was deeply insulting, even when it was happening, where because she's a woman, that means that like she's different, and it's like we tried to write her like she was a mother, and I'm like, how about you write her like she's a fucking starship captain? How about fucking that? How about you take a woman, you make her a fucking starship captain, then you make her act like a fucking starship captain, you fucking idiots. Like you hack writers. Like it's really fascinating that like the second there's a woman in a position of power, suddenly we've got to really consider, oh, she's a mother. Like, or like how often did we talk about like Jean-Luc Picard like he's a father, Like, shut the fuck up. She's a starship captain. She should have been a starship captain. But instead we got this, like, weirdo, which is such a shame because the actress is so good, right? Like, it's such a fucking shame that they, like, really did this actress dirty. They got this really powerful, really exceptionally good actress and gave her this just shitty role. And distilled the entire show of anything that could have possibly made it good, right? Like really think about this, okay? Really fucking think about this with your brain for 2 seconds. The premise of the show is that Voyager was flung into an alternative, not dimension, but like they were billions of light years away from home. They got flung into an entire different quadrant, right? They're lost in space, essentially. And they get lost in space with a group of fucking mercenaries, like a group of rebels, the Maquis, right? The Maquis. So you've got half of the starship is Federation, and half of them are Maquis, right? These rebels. And there wasn't an episode where there was a coup attempt. There wasn't an episode of like real strife or conflict. That the Maquis basically just became part of the crew, and that was the whole thing. When, like, it would take, like, 30 seconds of somebody to sit down and be like, yeah, Chakotay, the leader of the Maquis, should constantly be plotting against Janeway, right? That he should be attempting to maintain his status as, like, second in command of this whole thing, while attempting to constantly undercut her and constantly find a way to take this whole thing over, right? Wouldn't that be dramatic and interesting? Nah. Like, it just became really obvious that the people who were writing Star Trek were just like nephews. Just people who like were like, oh, my buddy Phil, he's got a son who'd like to be a writer. Oh, okay, Phil. What makes Star Trek good? Oh, space and lasers. Cool. Which is basically all it's turned into. Have a good one, Jimmy. John, do you think there's a distinction between states which are or were colonial but could exist without colonialism, like Germany, and states which are in their very essence colonial? John, do you think there's a distinction between states which are or were colonial but could exist without colonialism and states which are in their very essence colonial? I mean, if there is one, I don't think it's that important. And like what is a state? Like what creates the borders of a state? What erects a state? Like a state is just like literally an apparatus with armed guards. It's just straight up an organization that is protected by armed guards that puts edicts out into the world, right? And there's a border drawn around it, and that everybody goes, okay, that's the border. So whatever this organization says goes in this border, and the people who are living in that border can't do much about it because there's literally armed guards to enforce that, right? So it's like what distinction can be made? Like what is, and is that distinction important? Like the like states can exist without being colonial. Yeah, I just don't know if I understand the importance of the question, right? And like I guess sure, like yeah. And like certainly it is better to be a state whose history is not colonial, right? That seems to be best. That if you are just like a people who just are in the area that you've been there, and you've been there for thousands of years, and you're just, here you are, right? Seems to me like that's a better way of building up a nation state, right? That you're just like, okay, we've been here for thousands of years. We've been generation by generation, we've been developing, and we have our own history, and we have all this kind of stuff. Uh, um, because what it means is that there's no real internal strife in regards to different ethnicities and different sort of backgrounds. That like you don't have this like, well, you did this and then we have this and there's the history of this and there's these events and all of this kind of stuff. That the relations are class. Certainly there's class relations, right, as there are in all modern societies. But it seems to me to also that to also have this kind of colonial dynamic ends up working against the interests of the state and working against the interests of the people ultimately. That it benefits the capitalists, right? It benefits a small group of psychopaths who are totally fine with committing genocides for money. But it runs counter to the interests of the people who are actually living in these states, right? Because you have to like live with it. You've got to exist in the sort of perpetual state of needing to deal with this kind of stuff. And I think it's also very difficult for people to grab hold of the history of their own country, right? People don't really want to learn or know anything about even the history of their own country. And they certainly don't want to learn about the colonial history of their own country. So like Canada is a colonial nation. And there's just no way to avoid that. That we showed up, exterminated the First Nations people, cleared them out, put up reserves and shit like this, right? Which is just like turning the First Nations people into a zoo, basically, where they have like pens and shit. And then we go along our merry way pretending like everything's fine, you know? And it's not. And it keeps like bubbling up and it keeps rearing up because the First Nations people didn't go away, right? Like we diminished their numbers certainly, but they didn't like vanish from existence. And it's creating a lot of internal strife in Canada, right? It creates a lot of conflict, and it creates a lot of lightning rods for political organizations. Oh, excuse me, guys, 1 second. Oh, stupid nose. Noses. Like you have like literally political organizations that are organized around the idea of the denial of history. And they manifest most often in the Conservative Party, right? And then you've got organizations that exist in order to move forward with truth and reconciliation and move forward with these ideas. But a lot of the times they just end up pandering, right? So it's not actually anything serious. So it's just like there's a lot of like political gaming that happens in the system over this colonial process and this colonial unfolding that that we don't really deal with very honestly. It would be better for us if we did deal with it honestly, but we're not going to do that because that's not who we are. And all of this is to say that yeah, it would be better if you had a state where none of that was happening. Where if it was just like, yeah, we're all this person, we're all these people. Like, again, the Chinese are like this, right? The Han Chinese are largely, like, they're all Chinese, right? They've been there for thousands of years. Like, if you go back, like, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, you're going to find, like, some kind of conflict or some kind of fight, I'm sure, right? But, like, all of that's kind of gone. And so there's none of this internal struggle or this internal difficulty where that they even have to have these conversations in the first place. Whereas, you know, the Western powers and the European powers, because of the colonial period, we're constantly stuck in that. Constantly. Mikhail writes, the Westphalian system of what a state kind of matter. What is a state kind of matters. A Westphalian state is a system of states or international society comprising sovereign states, entities, possessing the monopoly of force within their mutually recognized territories. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Did I say something different? Like it's an organization or administration that has thugs, right? Has armed guards. June writes, like, German national identity is built around their common language and culture, which was an organic language, whereas Israel was completely fabricated into existence. Israel doesn't have any historical or cultural basis, and modern Hebrew was invented by Zionists for Zionist reasons. Yeah, I mean, like, I think what you're kind of asking is, like, does Israel have any legitimacy, right? Is there such a thing as a state of Israel, right? Like, does it actually exist? And, like, this gets into, like, a really interesting conversation of, like, the recognition that there is actually no such thing as a state. Like, it doesn't actually exist as like a concept. Like, we have a concept of a country. We have a concept of a nation. We have a concept of the state. But it's abstract, right? It's an abstraction that that the enforcement by militarization is certainly a convincing way to convince you that what edicts get passed should be followed. But the truth is that, like, there's no such thing as Canada. There's no such thing as America. Not really. And, like, these borders and these distinctions and these countries and these things that exist can be renegotiated and rechanged. And, like, the concept of Israel as a nation, like, it doesn't need to go that way. And it's completely possible that it's completely possible that things can go completely sideways for Israel. Like, it's totally possible. That's something that I don't think many people want to acknowledge or admit, is that things can go, like, really fucky for Israel in a big, serious way. Conton writes, John, do you like A Tribe Called Red, First Nations music group? They go hard. You know what? I know of A Tribe Called Red, but I've never actually listened to them. They were always sort of around when I was younger, but I just never, because of my upbringing, right? Because of my Christian fundamentalism. It was just like, I knew about them, but I never felt the need to pursue them at all. And by the time I kind of broke free of all of that, I was off doing other things. I think this is literally, like, the first time I've heard of A Tribe Called Red since I was a kid. Maybe I should look into them. The Westphalian Treaty is a collective name for the two peace treaties signed in 1648 in the I cannot pronounce this word, man. Westphalian cities of Osnabrück and Munster one. I gotta think that one is a typo, right? I gotta think that. There's a city out there. It's actually called Munster one, which implies the existence of Munster 2 and 3. The treaty ended in the 80 Years' War between Spain and the Dutch, and the German faced with 30 Years' War. The treaty is also considered the beginning of the modern international system in which the sovereign state does not interfere with each other's domestic affairs. The treaty is recognized as the first treaty of modern international law. Wow. Oh, the one is the source citation from the AI. Well, thank you, Mikhail. I appreciate that. Hopefully one of these days I'll just be able to go, like, Siri, what is Westphalian? Westphalian. Thank you, Leon. Thank you. Bread Bunny, how you doing out there? Hey, John, what do you think about buying gold? As dollar goes down, gold is worth more. The price of gold doubled over 2020 and keeps rising constantly in Canada. Yeah, I mean, like, I got you, bro. Look, I don't know, man. Like, whatever. Like, it's all of the things that they say about gold are true, right? It's just like any other resource. It's just like a thing that exists in the world. And, like, I don't know. Don't take financial advice from me. My financial advice is we should overthrow the system of capital. That's my advice. Right? My financial advice is we should overthrow the system of finance capital. It's weird that we have defined our entire culture based on the price of gold or whatever. Oh, Milo, are you okay, buddy? Oh, dude, he's doing it again. Hold on, guys. Sorry. Dude, are you okay? Okay. 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 Okay, buddy. Sorry, guys. I stood up and my body was immediately like, oh, you're up. You better go have a pee. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. What do I think about buying gold? I don't know, bro. Like, it is fundamentally true. Like, the pitch of gold is it's actually true, right? Like, it's stable in that there's only so much of it, right? So they can't manipulate it. It's not like a fiat currency. That that if other currencies decline in value, gold will remain stable because it's the amount it is what it is. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, sure. You know, it is just kind of currency exchange, right? And like, it makes sense. Dollar goes into decline, get your money out of dollars, put it into gold, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Buy gold, buy gold. I don't know, man. I don't know buying gold, right? It just feels like we're like prospectors, right? Oh, I've got gold, right? Everybody's got to move their money into gold. Like, how is that? It just seems like such a massive regression, right? It just seems like this massive regression that we're literally like, what we got to do is get back to gold. Gold is the wave of the future. Like, the shiny rocks we pulled out of the earth. That's the future. Like, just fine, fine. Like, if you feel like it's the thing that you want to do, it's probably not going to be a losing idea, right? I think that's the thing about it. If you put your money into gold, you're probably not going to lose your shirt, right? Like, it's gold. It's just a raw commodity. That's it. It's gold. So you can't. I don't think that you can like lose money doing it. Right? Again, not financial advice. I am not a financial person. I think that we should overthrow the system of finance capital. It's sort of weird that we put prices on this stuff in the first place. Instead of actually sitting down and having discussions about what we should do with all this stuff. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, but that to me seems like that's been my thing the whole time. It's like I like maybe you're not gonna make a whole ton of money doing it. For a guy like me, it's almost irrelevant, right? Like there's no safe harbor for people in my position, right? That we're all just kind of like one bad turn of the wheel and it all goes haywire, and that's just the way it is. And that'll be true whether or not I have my money in fucking gold or not. So I just don't fucking bother. I think the conversations about like, should I put my money in gold, really only starts to matter if you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Like if you've got a lot of money, if you've got a big portfolio, right? And then you can get a section of it and say, and it makes sense that a section of your portfolio is just literally like hard resources that are just kind of there. And if you're concerned about like a big storm coming and wiping out like big sections of your thing, then it's like, okay, but you'll always have that, right? You'll always have this just, but it's not going to make you money, right? Like, which is the whole idea. So the whole concept that there's huge sections of the society that are actually like, gold, buy gold, gold, should tell you that there's this like, people are anticipating collapse. People are anticipating these big storms. And then the next collapses are going to be big, right? The next collapses are going to be big. They're not going to be little ones. It's not going to be like the .com bubble, which was a collapse, right? Like it's not going to be like the COVID stock market crash, right? Which was bad, but not like big. Like the 2008 financial collapse was really, really big. That was a really, really big collapse. And then they did everything they could to reward the people who were responsible for doing it. And basically convince the system from then on that, that we can do whatever we want because we'll always be rewarded for it no matter what we do. And so the next collapses are going to be very, very dramatic and very, very big because the people who are at the center of it think that they'll be rewarded for it. And so the bigger the collapse, the bigger the reward. Yeah, it's still subject to price manipulation. It's all set in dollars, et cetera, et cetera. You can't pay the bills with gold, right? Maybe when it's Mad Max Surreal who has the gold matters. But like everything is literally just like, what does anybody give a fuck about it? Right? Shiny rock. This rock shinier than that rock. Right? It's all kind of a faff in the first place. The whole concept of pricing gold in the first place. It's just this weird thing that we have financialized the whole thing and been like, that has this number and that has this number and this is valuable because of that and that has this value and this kind of thing. But it's all just fucking rocks that we pull out of the fucking ground, you know? So it just doesn't, but it has its own internal quote unquote logic. Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be logical to be considered valuable, which is a strange thing. Well, that was NFTs, right? NFTs should have showed everybody that as long as the only thing that gives things their value is that people think they have value. That's it. So if everybody just decided, right, today, right in this moment, if suddenly everybody went, oh, wait a minute, that ensuring that everybody had a house was the most valuable thing, and there was nothing that was more valuable than housing homeless people, right? Then that would happen. Because everybody would just be like, that's the most valuable thing. And we believe that to be the most valuable thing. And so the people that do that will be considered the most valuable. And the people who provide that service will be considered the most valuable. And that'll be the most valuable thing. Right? Not withholding food and shelter, not withholding these things, but providing them. Right? Not renting them, but providing them. Like, like the entire economy is basically based on rich people feelings, right? That if all the rich people just decided that gold had no value, then it wouldn't have value, right? Because nobody would want it and no one would buy it. Just like fucking NFTs, right? Because what gave NFTs their value was the idea of like, oh, this is new and interesting. Oh my goodness, look at this thing. I guess it has value and all that kind of stuff. But then everybody realized, wait, this is nothing. It's just dumb, right? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't provide anything. It's not useful. You can't do anything with it, right? You can't even really make anything out of it. And so they all plummeted in value and went to zero. Why? Because everybody knew that you couldn't sell them anymore, right? And the same is true of something like gold. That like the only reason why gold even has like any kind of intrinsic value that we consider anything is because you can hold an object that's made of gold, right? And you're just like, oh, okay, somebody actually made something with that. And like gold is like something, it's part of like it's like a construction thing. You could use gold for something if you wanted it. So there's always going to be a buyer, right? So there is technically somebody out there that's like, well, I do need gold for like a superconductor, right? I do need gold for this. And really, when you're buying gold, what you're buying is not a nugget of gold. You're usually buying an investment in a gold mine, right? That's usually what you're actually doing. Didn't Marx believe that commodities have an inherent value irrespective of what people believe they're actually worth? No, Marx put forward the labor theory of value that and it's been a while since I've looked into this, so I'm not going to nail this perfectly. But Marx actually said that what gave things their value was the labor that was put into it. That things like gold or silver or these kinds of things don't actually have an intrinsic value. They're just things that exist in the world around us. And what give things their value is labor. That's what actually gives things their value. So if something requires a lot of labor to produce, that makes it have more value than or be more costly than something that requires not a lot of labor to produce, right? Like if directly outside of your house there's a million apple trees, and everybody and anybody can walk into the forest and pick apples, right? Then selling apples at the market is not going to have, that's not going to be very valuable, right? So you're not going to make a lot of money doing that. You'll make a little bit of money, obviously, because it's like, oh, I don't have to go into the forest and get the apples, like right over there, right? But you did that. You put that labor in. Okay, cool. I'll give you a little bit for that, right? As opposed to like down the way, there's like a mine, right? And you got to go down 10 miles in a mine shaft with your tools and everything, spend all day like hammering against a wall to get a lump of coal to come back up and then go sell it at the market. People are going to be like, yeah, there's more value to that. Why? Because it's much farther, much longer, much more difficult work for less, right? You get less out of it. And I don't want to do that. So I'll definitely pay you more for that because it was harder to do and more difficult to accomplish than like apples that are, I could literally lean out my window and grab one. So it's the difference in labor that gives things their value, according to Marx's idea, right? The labor theory of value. So like, thing. And what I like about this perception, what I like about this articulation is that Marx was attempting to create a model, a perception of economics and a perception of value that did not begin with the concept that the earth is just commodities, right? That apples are a commodity. It doesn't begin with the idea that this is a lifeless, dead thing that exists only as a financial transaction. Right, that an apple is an apple in and of itself, and that it's our labor that gives it the price that it has. Because the conversation isn't, well, what's the apple worth? The conversation is, what are you willing to trade for that apple? Right, that it's this intrinsic understanding that says, we're all just kind of making it up. Like money doesn't actually exist, right? Yeah, and Joe, you're getting into like the supply and demand idea of it, right? The idea that like if I have one apple and 10 people want an apple, then there's gonna be a bidding war on that. June says, I don't understand, is labor the source of a commodity's value, or does a commodity have no intrinsic value? No, like the commodity itself has no intrinsic value because viewing something as a commodity is itself like humans are not commodities, right? Like the whole concept of viewing things as commodities is a very capitalist mode and a very capitalist mindset, right? It lets you just turn everything into a spreadsheet, dehumanize everything, disconnect it from the natural world. That an apple is not part of a natural system; it's a commodity that comes from bags, right? Uh, um, and that, like, how much is a human being worth? Like, do human beings have should human beings have a commodified value associated with them? Is that something that we should do? Right? Uh, uh, and so commodities themselves don't have any intrinsic value. It's the labor that was required to produce the thing in the first place that gives it its value. And then of course, like, the rules of supply and demand, I think, are pretty solid, but they're not perfect. Like, there's the way economists usually describe supply and demand is this concept of equilibrium, right? Just that there'll be like this perfect thing this perfect stasis where supply and demand are perfectly met. It never happens that way. But like, what is the value of what is the value of the earth? Like, how much value does the earth actually have? Like, all of these measurements are just a way to kind of denaturalize and dehumanize the subject, which I think is something I try to avoid, right? Because like everything, because everything is like I hate money, like I hate it. I actually really really hate it. I wish that we didn't have to deal with it at all, because it takes something that is existent and real and gets created without our influence at all, right? The force of creation that exists around us, and it starts hanging price tags on it, and it just kind of sullies the whole thing. Just kind of creates this like game that's layered on top of this system that says that's constantly like a robot trying to keep track of everything, when that keeping track of everything is annoying. Like, really deeply annoying. Like, I understand why you need to have some kind of general sense of where things are going in the society. Like, in a rational society, in a society that was actually like reasonable, money would exist as something that would happen like in the background. That it would exist like that there would be officials, like we would have elected officials, and we have governance, right? And within the structure of governance, there would be, in like the back room somewhere, a group of people who were basically just like keeping track of the sliders of everything. So that if an elected official came up and said, we want to do this, right? The guys who are like in the back controlling, like just managing the money or doing the flows would just be like, oh, okay, so you want to do that, so that slides that over there and this slides that over there, right? And that would be useful just to be sure that like somebody could come in there and be like, hey, can you show me like what's our police budget look like? What's our fire department budget look like? And they could be like, oh, well, like what's our food distribution budget look like? And they'd be like, oh, okay, like this is what it looks like. And you could be like, that seems kind of out of whack, doesn't it? Right? And maybe the people managing the money be like, well, that's not our job. Like, our job's not to say whether this is good or bad. Our job is just to manage the flows of money, and this is the way it's been doing. So if you want to change it, then go ahead with that, right? Like, we're not the policymakers. We just manage the money. And so everybody would be able to go into shopping stores, and everybody would do this kind of stuff, and they would get their food and get the kind of stuff that's going on. All the money would happen in the background. And there'd be people who were just like, yeah, this is how much money is going into that, right? And we sort of determine that, like, this amount is in waste and this amount is in corruption, let's say, and this is the amount that's actually occurring. And, like, if you want to crack down on the corruption, then you need to pass policies and, like, do that kind of stuff to do that. But the idea that individuals, I think the most annoying part of modern day capitalism is that every single individual needs to become a financial expert. Every single individual is told, it's up to you to manage your money, to manage your portfolio, to manage your wealth profile, to manage this, to manage that, to manage this other thing, and all that kind of stuff. And you need to be a financial expert to be able to predict the comings and goings of what's going on the stock market and all this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And all of it is dumb, right? It's just dumb. It's just fucking annoying and stupid. Like, we literally can erect, like, the universal healthcare systems that exist across the world shows you very clearly and cleanly that we can deliver services to the public at no cost to the public on an individual one-to-one kind of basis, right? That the individual doesn't need to, like, walk in and be like, hey, I broke my arm, here's $200, right? Like, that kind of idea is gone. And instead we can put it all in the background. And we can just say, like, sure, there's a system of taxation that comes in, and if you do it right, you tax the people at the highest echelon, right, the parasite class usually, one hopes, and that distributes the wealth into these systems, right? So if you can do that for healthcare, you can do that for food production, you can do that for food distribution, you can do that for the maintenance of apartment buildings, you can do that for housing, right? There's no reason you can't. We're just choosing not to. And instead turning around and saying, it's up to you and your personal responsibility to responsibly personalize this personal responsibility thing. Oh, by the way, you need a fucking PhD degree to make sense of anything. And, oh, the system's going to collapse under your feet anyway. Right? And you might lose everything anyway, so just deal with it. Ha 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 ha. Not normal. Like, not normal. Everyone should have access to food and shelter. And that should just be a given. And there should be no concern for the financial aspect of it at all. Literally let people walk into places. Like, if you need to have, like, rationing cards or whatever to make sure that people aren't getting, like, 58 chicken wings or whatever, right, then fine. But, like, give people access to food and give people access to shelter. No excuses. Like, no excuses whatsoever. Alano Bimbandwi. I want to believe that that's your real name. I do. I just want to believe that. I'm going to. Yeah, like Thatcher said once, there's no such thing as society. Yeah, ludicrous, right? I mean, it just sort of revealed the, like, sociopathic nature of Margaret Thatcher, right? Like, there's no such thing as society, so I can murder who I like, right? Like, oh, there's it's sort of weird, right? Like, if there's no such thing as society, then what's with all these prisons, right? Oh, you're from Gabon, Africa. Fantastic. Good to see you, my man. Let's do this. Let's bring up the map. Hold on. I want to see if I can do this. Nobody help me. Don't help me. Now, Gabon. I'm not looking directly at it, so I can't see the names. Gabon. Africa is like my Achilles heel with this, man. It's so huge. And the names keep changing. So South Africa's right there. You're Madagascar. The DNC is like right here. The Gabon. This is going to be embarrassing. Libya's right here, right up in here. Egypt's here. Gabon. Gabon. I'm gonna think that Gabon is like over here. Like over here, I think. Here. I'm doing it. Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea. Damn it. Gabon, where are you? Gabon. I was kind of close. I was close. I was relatively close. Like I was here, right? I was in Niger, Nigeria, Mali territory. The DRC is right here. Gabon. If I had actually known, I would have been like, yeah, that DR. Although I did call it the DNC. I straight up did call it the DNC. I admit it. But I was like, Congo, right? Congo. Democratic Republic of the Congo. I remember thinking, I was like, DNC. I was like, Democratic Nation of Congo? This seems wrong. So, Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon. The Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon. So I feel like some shit has happened fairly recently in the history of Gabon, right? Feel like there's like an echoing effect going on here where there's like Gabon, the Republic of Congo giving it a little hug, and then the Democratic Republic of Congo like right here with like a little line that's like, oh yeah, okay, so that's contested. Okay. Equatorial Guinea. All right. All right. Cool. Cool. I'm glad I did that. That's nice. Gabon. Dude, it must be nice to be on that side of the continent and not that side of the continent. It's just got to be that much nicer, right? It's got to be so much nicer to be like over here in Africa and not dealing with like Somali pirates. Did you hear about the blockade going on over here, my man? Like, Jesus, this is all crazy stuff. What's going on here? Anyway, but what was your question while I'm actively embarrassing myself? Yeah. One of the most developed. It also looks just straight up from the topography, like straight up. It looks like you guys are like, Gabon must be beautiful. Like really, it must be a really beautiful country. Here, let's imagery. No, get out of here. Not imagery. Come on, there's a way to do this. Terrain. That's what we're looking at. Nope. Yeah. Yes. Transit, biking. I want to see the like. Give it, yeah, satellite. Yeah, look at this, man. Fucking look at this. It's all green and shit. It's all beautiful, right? You got Libreville. That's a very French sounding name. My assumption is Gabon is still dealing somewhat with the colonial period and the French. Oh yeah, though. Look at this place. Oh hey, that draws the eye immediately. Check this city out. This is cool. Dude, I love looking at other people's cities. The French Institute of Gabon. Yep, the French. I called it. Cathedral Saint Marie. Yeah. How much colonialism still exists in Gabon, do you think? I have no idea. I assume still quite a bit. That the economy is still probably tied up pretty tightly. Look at how fucking cool this city looks, though. This is cool. And then, like, there's the main highway, the interstate highway, coming up here. Dude, man, I love SimCity. I gotta tell you, games like SimCity and shit, they pale in comparison. I wish I could tilt the camera. You know what I mean? Give me a tilting camera. It's cool. All right. I had a critic to communism because it lacks the essential aspect that exists in capitalism. Yeah, let's hear it, bud, and I'll respond to it. Our culture is shaped in France's architecture, language. Local languages have a big decrease in use. Yeah, makes sense. Here, let's Gabon Wikipedia. Dude, I love it. I love it when people from other countries come in here. It gives me a real excuse to learn something new about a country. French media widely consumed on the TV. Makes sense. So you really are like still a very French. Gabon's original anatomy were pygmy people, 14th century, Bantu migrants, blah, 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 blah. Since its independence from France in 1960, Gabon has had 3 presidents. Okay. It's a developing country. Yup, yup, yup. Official language is French. Constitute about 95%. Bantu ethnic groups consist about 95% of the population. Christianity is the nation's prominent religion. Petroleum and foreign private investment is the 4th highest HDI in the region. Okay, cool. Gabon's nominal GDP per capita. Yup, yup, yup. French rule. The French showed up 1875. Gabon became a territory of French Equatorial Africa. So, you know, about 100 years of colonialization, right? And then the first president elected 1961. So straight up, the Beatles are on tour. And Gabon is like, hey, maybe not so much with the French. And so the relationship between Gabon, it sounds to me like the relationship between Gabon and France. Ooh, coup d'etat. 2023 coup d'etat. Ooh. Following the announcement that Ali Bongo had won a 3rd term, military officers announced that they had taken power in a coup d'etat, canceled the election results. Oh, shit. On September 2023, General Nguema was sworn in as interim president of Gabon. Holy shit. You guys just had a coup? Dude, you just had a coup? Shit. That's intense. Holy shit, dude. I need to learn more about that. Yeah, no, this is what we're talking about now. So in Gabon, so August 2023, a coup. Since the independence from France, he's primarily been ruled by the Bongo family, starting with President Omar Bongo in 1967, and following his death in 2009 by his son Ali Bongo Ondimba. Ali Bongo was reelected, which prompted a failed coup attempt in 2019. So already, the Bongo family is getting coups done up against it. During the rule of the Bongo family, the country had been plagued by accusations of corruption and nepotism. Yeah, oh, big surprise, a family is ruling the place and there's nepotism charges. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Several elections had been tainted by reports of fraud or irregularities. Despite being a member of OPEC, one of Africa's major producers of oil, and having one of the highest per capita GDPs, Gabon faces serious socioeconomic crisis. A third of the population lives below the poverty line, and the unemployment rate among Gabonese aged 15 to 24 was estimated at 40%. So it sounds to me like the Bongos were taking your oil revenue and pocketing it. Right? In a speech delivered on one of the country's Independence Day, a close ally of France insisted it would not allow Gabon to be subjected to destabilization. Okay. Who did the coup? Like that's what I want to know. Is this a CIA coup? But like if the Bongos are playing ball, like if they're just sucking up the oil and sending it over to France or whatever. So who did the coup? Amid the growing scrutiny, the armed forces of Gabon launched a pre-dawn coup. So hold on. So you've got the Bongos declaring independence from France, but they're an oil producing nation, right? Producing one of Africa's, despite being a member of OPEC, one of Africa's major producers, which accounts for 60% of national revenue. Jeez Louise. Aluno, 60% of your nation's national revenue comes from oil sales, right? And the Bongos, right, are probably playing ball, having the highest per capita GDP, but they're keeping everybody poor. Third of the population lives below the poverty line of US $5.50 a day. 40% unemployment rate in the youth. Gabon was ranked 136th out of 180 countries for the perception of corruption. Yeah, so it looks to me like a classic kind of like, we got to get rid of these yahoos. They're fucking up the nation. Right? The Bongos basically taking money for themselves. Lots of corruption going on. Right? And so the military launches a coup. Kind of a classic communist-sounding coup. Although I don't know anything about the armed forces of Gabon or what their principles are. The coup occurred just minutes after Bongo's re-election was declared. During a televised morning announced, around a dozen military personnel announced the end of the existing regime, claiming to be speaking on behalf of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions. We got to learn about that. Arrests of Ali Bongo. All right. So I think we got the two major figures, or the major institution, the Committee for the Transition of Restoration of Institutions, is the ruling military junta of Gabon. It took power in 2023. Dude, this is wild. This is absolutely wild. Dude, Aluna, are you still here? I hope you are. I didn't think you knew what kind of can of worms you were opening. You didn't realize I was going to be an inquisitive little monkey and be like, hey, let's learn about Gabon. A coup? What are you saying? The coup was done by the CIA to prevent a coup from the rebels, like in Burkina Faso and other regions. What's your source for that, Isaac? Tell me what to look at, okay? Because I'd like to know, right? I want to know who's doing these things. Okay, it's this guy. Bryce Clotaire Oligue. Oh, Nguma. Awful. Just awful. I give myself a D. Like, literally, D makes degrees. It sounded like a name. Ooh. Is a Gabonese military official serving as transitional president of Gabon, chairman of the Committee for Transition, and a commander-in-chief of the Gabonese Republican Guard. I don't care about his early life. Following the coup, he was later seen on the shoulders. In an interview with Le Monde later that day, he referred to Bongo as retired and said that the military had staged the coup due to discontent that had been growing in the country since Bongo's stroke in 2018, his decision to run for a third term, the disregarding of the country's constitution, and the conduct of the election. His appointment as interim president was later confirmed by other generals, and he was formally sworn in as the transitional president at the presidential palace on the 4th of September. In his inaugural address, he pledged to hold free, transparent elections, but did not give an exact date as to when. He also announced the formation of a new government in the coming days and proposed new electoral legislation, a new penal code, a referendum on a new constitution, and the release of all political prisoners. In October 2023, Oligue announced that he would give up his salary as president and rely instead on his wages as commander of the Republican Guard. I'd love to hear like a statement of like real intention or something like this. I'm not seeing like. So Isaac, the reason why I'm asking for like a source or any of that kind of stuff, right? Isn't Ali Bongo a West? This is the thing. I don't know anything about these people, okay? I don't know anything about these people. Given the information that I have, very cursory, you all just watched me do it, right? That this is the thing. Just given this cursory analysis, how I figure that this is that in Gabon, French colonial period, right? Independence movement comes up, and a family, the Bongos, take over. but the bongos are probably largely subservient to Western power, right? So they remain subservient to France, but that the bongos have essentially established themselves as the intercary, right? That instead of the French living in Gabon and ruling Gabon directly, the bongos are the ones that have pushed the French directly out, but now are the rulers, and so still interact with France, but now are taking a piece of the pie for themselves. And that has now come to an end, like literally in the last few months, with the military finally saying, okay, we don't need the bongos anymore to be involved in this process. And instead, us, the military, are going to take this thing over. And probably, honestly, continue acting as intersaries to the West. Right? Like that seems to me to be the process of how this has all gone. Like, yeah, I don't really need like the CIA to be involved in any of that. You know what I mean? Like, seems to me like that's a pretty typical, straightforward kind of thing that happens. So that's the situation as it is in Gabon. Aliano is now making a comment, and I'm very, very curious now that we've gone through all that. So, Aliano Bimbendwi, I'm definitely mispronouncing that. In capitalism, we have a system by which workers are pressured by owners and in close touch, which enhances the capacity of producing more, a personal business that focuses on its growth, and rewards workers with a payment raises and position promotions. This makes the workers work hard and showcases the high level of productivity in capitalist countries. So now in socialist countries, people have a set salary which is determined by the government, and regardless of your performance, no incentive, no fear of losing a job. So this is the classic sort of pro-capitalist argument. And in small scale kind of ways, like if this is what's happening in your like town, right? Yeah, sure. Right? Like if it's literally like a guy owns a shop. A guy owns an ice cream shop. Let's make it as silly as possible. Right, Olano? A guy owns an ice cream shop. And he wants it to be, he's the owner of the ice cream shop. And so he wants to sell as much ice cream as possible. And he wants to be the ice cream man. And he wants to make, he wants to be able to buy ice cream as cheap as possible, make wages as low as possible in order to maximize profits for himself selling ice cream, right? And he is one of the workers, right? So in the Marxist sense, he would be the petite bourgeoisie, right? He's an owner-operator, right? Which this is kind of the conception that you're laying out. And so right from the outset, I want to let you know that that's not really what we're talking about, right? That's not really the discussion that's going on. That when we get talking about capitalism and we get talking about systems of capital, we're actually going up a level, right? That it's not your fellow who works in an ice cream shop and is trying to make money and hiring people and while simultaneously working that job, right? That's not capitalism. Okay, that's an individual working within the system of capital, attempting to benefit himself and do the best that he possibly can. And in truth, like anybody who works in any system doing the best that they can within any system is going to have positive outcomes because people want to have positive outcomes for each other, right? And it's just how humanity works. And so if you put that in its most rosy possible way, then you can make it seem like it's a decent thing. But when we're discussing capitalism, we're discussing the level above that guy. We're discussing the bank that guy got a loan from, and has to pay interest payments to, and not even just the bank, but the owner of the bank, who does no work, does no labor, and in fact inherited the bank from his father, right? Like that's the level that we're discussing when we're discussing the system of capital. We're not really discussing like an owner operator. We're not really discussing this kind of thing. And like what you say is actually true about the system of capital, that withholding food and shelter from people is a huge incentive to get them to work harder. Ensuring that you have huge segments of the population that live in poverty. So in Gabon, you've got what one third of the country of Gabon lives in poverty, right? Lives below the poverty line. And so when you have that situation where you've got widespread poverty, then yeah, an effective way to mobilize a workforce is to incentivize them to work harder through through this pressure that you discuss, right? That you offer them promotions and wages, right? But it's all based on the idea that they live in poverty in the first place, right? And so the starting point of the system of capital in your kind of conception of what you're putting forward is literally a third of the country lives in poverty. And from that poverty, you can create systems that derive some kind of production, which sort of forgets about the whole purpose of a socialist agenda, which is to eliminate poverty. Right? You have this kind of circuitous logic that says, well, capitalism is good because it uses the poverty that people are experiencing as a way to pressure them to work harder to increase productive forces so that they will eventually increase the standard of living for themselves. Like that's this kind of chain of being. Whereas a socialist would be like, just take the fucking money the bongos are hoarding, right? Distribute it amongst the populace, provide food and shelter. And if the capitalist goes, well, then people won't work as hard, you go, yeah, okay. I don't give a fuck. Like, since when is our life about working yourself to death? Since when is that the purpose of existence? Since when is the purpose of existence just to work for the ice cream shop guy? Right? Yeah, in socialism, there is no worry. If you lose your job, the government will give you another, even if the job is not necessary. Great. Right? So no poverty. Right? You're not worried about where your next meal is going to come from. You don't have to subserviate yourself to these losers who are literally exploiting your need for food and shelter so that they can pitch more ice cream or whatever it is they're doing. Right? And moreover, you don't need to listen to some worthless capitalist, some guy sitting in a fucking vault somewhere, Scrooge McDuck style, counting his money, who couldn't find your business on a map if he tried. See, but here's the thing, Alano. You and I have a different meaning of what performance is. Okay? Like, you and I just understand the concept of production differently. That under a capitalist system, okay? So let's say your workers are working really hard, which they would because they need food and shelter, okay? So all of the productivity, right, all of the wages that the all of the wages all of the wages that the wage earner earns, well, where does that go? Right? Under a capitalist system, all of the wages that the wage earner goes towards food and goes towards shelter. Right? Who owns the food and who owns the shelter? The capitalists. So you've got people who are working in order to provide a service in order to secure food and shelter for themselves. And they buy that food and shelter from the people who are withholding it. which is the capitalists. This is not productivity. You understand? That no matter how hard the worker works, the worker is in a dead end. That he himself is a loop that is caught in a productive feedback loop, just a dead end loop, where his production is simply for his survival in and of itself under the capitalist model. And that any productivity that comes out of it comes from the sale of a good or a sale of labor that goes towards who? People who are wealthy. Right? And in a capitalist system, who are the people who are wealthy? Well, the people who own the means of production and who provide no value and add nothing to it. Those are the people who are actually wealthy, who can actually afford to purchase the service. And so what you end up with is you end up with a structure where you have parasites, just worthless people who are providing no benefit to anybody, bongos, right? Literally just guys that exist and are there, sucking up all of the productive capacity, all of the productivity that everybody's creating, and they're just sucking it up for themselves, and so it goes nowhere. And it achieves really nothing. Right? And that's capitalism. That's how it works. Everybody is working their life away to provide a service to people who have wealth, while those people who have the wealth do nothing. Right, but that production goes somewhere. Like, that production goes somewhere. Where does it go? Right? It goes into the pockets of the capitalist class. So if you produce $1 billion worth of goods and then one guy goes and sits on it, who cares? And also, like, Cuba is a really bad example to bring into the conversation because it's experiencing like a major sanction regime. Like, it's like really major and like very, very sort of odd, like, to say that Cuba is unproductive. Cuba has more doctors than Canada. Like, despite the sanctions, Cuba has been able to build a universal healthcare system for itself and provide healthcare to all its citizens. Right? And when I say Cuba has more doctors than Canada, I don't mean per capita. I mean they literally have more doctors than Canada. It's actually a national embarrassment. So it's odd to bring Cuba into the conversation because Cuba has been experiencing Western sanctions, which of course declines their productivity pretty dramatically. But in fields where they are able to expand and grow, like the medical field, they've done so dramatically. So I don't really understand where you're getting your perspective from. Like, this sounds to me like folksy common sense, right? You're just sitting there being like, people work harder when they need food and shelter, and that's a good thing for capitalism. And there's no like wider analysis. Like, where is your productivity even going? Like, capitalist nations are not productive because all of their productivity goes into black holes and dead ends. Right? They don't actually produce anything of value. They don't actually increase the quality of life for the citizenry. Right? Citizens get caught in feedback loops where they can't actually increase their own quality of life outside of just securing food and shelter for themselves. Right? And citizens exist in a kind of a subsistence level. Right? Citizens are permitted to subsist under capitalism, and the productivity that they actually produce for themselves, Cuba has workers and doctors flying out of the country into competitive capital countries in search for high wages, enforced by the strong markets in these countries. Oh my man, Alano, source required. Like, straight up. Like, this just sounds like folksy common sense, right? Doesn't sound, yeah, straight up capitalist agitprop, yeah. Like, I'm sure that there are plenty of migrants. Like, every country has a migration rate of about 15%, right? That's something I learned really early on. That if your position is like, but people migrate, yeah, every country has about a migration of about 15%, right? Because every country, like, there was this narrative that took hold in Canada of the brain drain to the United States, and I was like, oh, is there a brain drain? So I looked into it, and there's just like no evidence of it. Like there's no serious data to back up the concept that there is a significant brain drain going down to the United States from Canada. And any data they would provide would be like, look, migration levels. It's like, okay, well, what's the migration levels of the United States to literally anywhere else? What's the migration levels of any European country to anywhere else? What's the migration rates of Gabon to anywhere else? And you find out pretty quickly that every country has approximately a migration rate of about 15%, right? So Cubans leaving their country, yeah, everybody leaves their country, right? And so to layer on this kind of like other thing on top of it is weird, right? Cubans are all over Florida, yeah. There's lots of Gusanos who fled from Castro, right? There's lots of, like, for fuck's sake, Destiny's mom is a Gusano whose family fled from Castro, right? Because they were slave owners. They owned slave plantations. So yeah, there's plenty of former Cubans who were part of the Batista regime that left Cuba because they knew that they would have to face the communists who took over. Like my man, Alano, my man. You're drinking a lot of Kool-Aid here, bud. There's a lot of Kool-Aid happening. Like they escaped for a better life. A better life? Yeah, they escaped the Castro. Like they escaped Castro's. Like Castro would kill these people. He called them gusanos, worms. Right? Because they worked with Batista, a slave regime propped up by the United States. Like, please, for the love of God, do not ignore basic history. Like, do you not know about Batista? Like, do you not know about Batista? Are you just gonna be in my chat denying the slave regime of Batista? No, like, this needs to be seriously addressed. I'm not gonna tolerate that. I'm not gonna tolerate that for 1 second, having a slavery apologist in my chat. Do you not know about Batista? Do you not know about the slave regime that existed in Cuba? Do you not know about that? And imagine believing that that what's going on in Cuba is a dictatorship. Just embarrassing. Yeah, it looks like. It looks like we just have like another CIA bot in chat. Like nothing really interesting to add to the conversation. Doesn't really know basic history. Right? Doesn't really know anything. Right? Like, just kind of embarrassing himself. Yeah, it's willful ignorance. Like just being dumb on purpose. Right? Yep. Tanky Castro took his family's slaves away. Yeah. Like, it's. We did learn about Gabon. That was nice. I actually think that's really great. I would like to know if the CIA was involved in this. Like, that's pretty neat. United by capitalism, dude. A third of your country lives in poverty. United by capitalism. Like, what we literally just read about it, dude. Like, we literally just went through it. Like, we literally just went through the history of your country. That your country was experiencing colonialism until the 60s. The Bongos declared independence, and then capitalism reigned. And what's the result of it? What's the result of 60 years? 60 years of capitalism under the Bongos. We literally just read about it. You straight up end up with You straight up end up with a third of your country in poverty. There's your fucking capitalism for you. This weird position that you're holding is just getting more embarrassing by the minute. Pull up the Gabon economy page. I think I missed it. Am I dumb? Economy. Here you go. Economy of Gabon. Yeah, 60% is oil. Literally, big capitalism brain time. Let's sell our oil. The economy of Gabon is characterized by strong links with France, called it. Large foreign investments, so your foreign capital, it keeps everybody poor, right? Dependence on skilled foreign labor, and decline of agriculture, right? Of course, you have to decline the agricultural sector. You can't have an actual independent Gabon, right? If the people of Gabon could provide their own food for themselves, then they would actually be independent. So it sounds to me like the bongos were just the administrators for the system of capital. Gabon on paper enjoys a per capita income 4 times that of most nations of Africa, but its reliance on resource extraction industries fail to release much of the population from extreme poverty. There's your capitalism right there. As much as 30% of the population lives under the poverty threshold. Big success there, my man. Big capitalist success right there. 30% of the population living under the poverty threshold. Like it's just kind of... Most people of Gabon own their own house. I'll need a source for that, right? Because you seem to believe that Cuba is a dictatorship, so I'll need sources from you, my man. You're not exactly a trustworthy source. The country is rich in natural resources such as timber, manganese, oil. Yeah. Yeah, as of 2023, Gabon produces about 200,000 barrels of crude oil. Not available. Yeah, statistics. Government debt, of course, 62%. Yeah, got to keep the nation in debt to the colonial powers, right? That's important. Yeah, I bet there's a tiny elite hoarding everything while the rest of the country struggles. Yeah, that's pretty standard. Of course, we know who they are, the bongos, right? And now it's this guy. Now it's the military. Well, we do have a high unemployment rate, yeah. Gabon usually has a medium level purchasing power if you have a job, though we should consider the population is quite young. So many are parents sustained, yeah. Like, my man, what you're literally describing is a country that is dealing with the consequences of capitalism, right? That you have, you obviously have massive inequality going on. You have a corrupt leadership that's obviously skimming off the top and taking wealth for itself. Like my man, your country literally just had a coup. Like literally just had a coup. Like there's your capitalist success story, my man. Right? Like it's sort of weird that you're in here defending capitalism while your country is literally going through a military coup. It's a very weird position to take. Rah-rah capitalism, coups are normal. That's a normal thing that we should definitely be experiencing. We are progressing over the decades because of freedom. Oh, man. Like, around 80% of Gabonese lives in cities, the capital city, home to 59% of the population. I'd be curious to learn. Yeah, like, dude, Gabon joins its reliance on as much as 30% of the population lives under the poverty threshold. Like that's I'd like to learn more about that because that's usually where it really Yeah. Successive International Monetary Fund missions have criticized the Gabonese government for overspending on off budget items, literally buying cars and shit for themselves, overborrowing from the central bank, right? The new form of colonialism, slipping on the schedule for privatization and administrative reform. It successfully concluded a 15-month standby arrangement with the IMF. Dude, like literally, like your system has empowered like obvious corrupt actors, and you're in here talking about how free you are, because of capitalism. It's crazy. Like it's actually crazy. Like your country is straight up a colonial power, like a colonial nation that has seemed to just been a colonial nation the entire time. You're a victim of capitalist colonialism, uh, uh, living in a colonial nation, and you've just literally, like within the last 6 months, experienced a military coup, and yet you're still telling me that capitalism is this great thing. Like I don't think that a guy like you is interested in being convinced. Like I think that there are people who are just not going to be persuaded, and I think that you're one of them. That like you've just decided that capitalism is good, in spite of all of the evidence to the contrary. Not that you know much about anything, right? Like yeah, it is one of the richest countries in Africa in terms of per capita income. However, large parts of the population are very poor. Like, it just seems to me like I just don't know what it is you think you're achieving. Capitalism needs time to grow. The last 400 years, forget about it. Come on, give it a moment. It needs time. But over time, freedom will lead it to the top. Now we have to wait before we become a solid social democracy. Yeah, hold your breath on that, my man. You literally just had a military coup. Like, dude, the people that this channel attracts, man. The people this channel attracts. Like, holy cow. Like, yesterday it was straight up a libertarian who was like, slavery is good. Now we got a guy from Gabon who thinks that capitalism is the bee's knees, like living in a country that is like a post-colonial, like French colonization, who thinks that the system of capital is great, even though a third of his country lives in poverty. Like, like there's literally no reason why anybody in Gabon should live in any kind of poverty at all. Right? If your country is as rich as it looks, there's just literally no reason for it. It just exists because it benefits the system of capital. That's why. We do have a little political instability. Like the downplay of the century. It's got to be the biggest downplay I've ever heard in my life. We we do have a little political instability. Straight up a military coup. Straight up the military walked into your buildings, was just like, yeah, this guy, nah, that's not gonna happen. Just a teensy little bit of political instability from the military. Yeah, the official language in Gabon is French. Isn't that all you need to know to see this cultural imperialism that has gone on inside Gabon? Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like the language itself is French. It's not like the indigenous language. It's pretty. That is poverty by international definition. But like I said, the cost of living is low compared to many countries. Like this cope that you got, right? That's real cool cope, right? A third of your country lives in poverty, while your nation is one of the richest on the continent, right? Like cope all you want with that, you can't get away from it. Like, oh, it's not as bad as poverty as you think it is. Yeah, it's poverty, right? And why does that poverty persist? Because it benefits the ruling class, right? They need people to be poor. And why do they need people to be poor? To accept these shitty jobs so that they can increase their productivity through putting pressure on them, which you seem to love, right? You seem to be a big fan of the idea that if we withhold food and shelter from people and keep them poor, we can exploit them for increased productivity. That's a yikes from me, my man. So not only do we have like kind of like a slavery apologist in Cuba, we've got a wage slavery apologist in your own country, Gabon. Like one would hope that you would wish better for your fellow citizen. One would hope that you would wish better. Hey, Alano, like you don't really get how done you are, right? Like you don't get how finished you are, right? Like what you are arguing for is wage slavery. You understand that? Do you understand that what you are actually arguing in favor of is wage slavery, and that what you are looking to accomplish for your fellow man, for your fellow countrymen, for the people you live with, for the people you see every day, is the hope that they get to enslave themselves to capitalism so that they can have food and shelter? Like, do you not understand that this is the argument that you're making? That you want your friends and family, that you want your neighbors to sell themselves into wage slavery? Do you not understand that? No, I don't think so either. I think I'm well over. I think I'm well over. All right, guys. I'm going to call this one. This will be the end. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.